Good evening and welcome to the Pac-12 Chat Show Live here on the Voice of College Football channel. I'm Tony. We'll be joined in just a minute by Rick, Tim, and Chris, and we're glad to have a night to talk with you guys about Pac-12 football. Now, as always, we want to quick set the stage for what we want to do tonight. We're going to go through each of the Pac-12 games, and then we want to have you guys call in and tell us your thoughts. The point of this show is for you guys. It's for our fans and people here in the college football community online and throughout the world to talk about the Pac-12. So that's going to be our focus tonight. If you want to engage with us, you can do it in the chat. You can call in, which is the best. We'll post the link once that time is ready. Or you can send us Twitter direct messages, and we'll be right there. And we're glad to have you guys. If you want to help control the conversation and get something going, you can help support the show and help support Mark Rogers' Voice of College Football channel with a super chat, or you can hit us up directly at Venmo or PayPal. Those links are in the description, and we'll put them on in a little bit. So once again, our goal tonight is let's all chat and interact with you guys. So gang, welcome. Before we get started, any first thoughts on the week?
The week ahead or the week behind us?
The week behind
us. The week behind us, I'm ready to put behind us.
Yeah, not much for me about last week. I mean, did anyone play football last week? SC wasn't playing, so I wasn't interested.
They were not. And we got a couple teams that aren't this week. So why don't we get just a quick start and talk about the two teams that have the week off, the Washington Huskies and the Oregon State Beavers. Two very, very interesting teams up in the Northwest. What do you guys think about this week and kind of looking ahead? We did this last week. We talked real briefly about what was coming up for Washington and Oregon State. What do you guys think about their season so far and what they've got coming?
I think that they've both had great seasons so far. Washington is like a way better team than I think people thought they would be. DeBoer in his first year has gotten all kinds of accolades. With Penix throwing the ball around everywhere. I love the Beavs have kind of adopted them for the season. I'm going to toot the horn all year until it doesn't work out, but or until the season's over. But it's interesting because they're both 6-2 and they're both 3-2 in conference, and then they play each other, after the bye, and what will be like a very interesting game for both of them, and kind of like almost somewhat defined. I mean, Washington State's in that picture too, but almost like defining of like which one of that group, can one be the top of that group and also kind of stake a claim even amongst the other four that we kind of always think of as that top four. And they're so different in that like Oregon State has a great secondary and Washington loves to throw the ball around. Oregon State's quarterbacks has issues, like Penix slings it around. It's like a very interesting matchup to me. I'm interested in what you guys think.
Yeah,
Go, Rick.
Sorry. I was just going to say that, this is a defining game for both of these guys. Like you mentioned, Chris, they're both 6-2 bowl eligible. Right now, there's 5 bowl eligible teams, I believe, in the Pac-12. Utah's sitting at 5-2. They're going to be bowl eligible as well. And they're going to play on Friday night, 7:30 Pacific Coast time on ESPN. So this is going to be a national statement game. I know there's some fans on this show. I'm seeing you, Connor Johnson, that believe that Oregon State should be ranked like 25 or higher. They're not. So if you want to get ranked 25, this is a perfect opportunity to go 7-2. So it's a big opportunity for the Beavs. And then for Washington, this is a huge game, obviously, because you got Oregon State, and the following week you have to play Oregon. So we're gonna know a lot about Washington and how real they are this year with those two games. Exciting.
Yeah, it is going to be a big game. With those losses in conference, it's probably unlikely that either one of them is going to be in the conference championship game, but they will absolutely have a hand in deciding who plays in that game. You're going to have the Civil War right at the end of the year at Corvallis, and that is definitely going to be huge for the Ducks and their hopes to make the championship game, as well as Washington is going to have a crack at Oregon as well. So this game will be huge for them for the overall look. Neither one of these teams, we thought they'd do well, but they both outperformed at least what I thought they would be able to do. And the future does look bright for both teams.
All right. Well, let's get into these games. But as we get into the games, guys, something pretty crazy happened in the Pac-12 this week that I want to have just a minute for a shout out on. I'm not sure if you guys heard the news from London, but how about the Pac-12 alumni? The United Kingdom has gotten themselves a new prime minister. His Majesty the King has chosen a prime minister, and he's a Stanford grad. So we now have our new world leader leading the charge. Guys, will the Stanford band be playing all right now at Changing of the Guard at Buckingham Palace? I mean, obviously not, but which I would love to see that. But
I was going to ask you, Tony, what's the over/under on the Stanford band being banned from Buckingham Palace?
Yeah, I don't know. Is the Stanford band even
appearances?
Are they two? I don't even know if they make it through the gates before they do something to get banned.
Said it 1.5.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. You can't get the tree to help with some policy decisions, but it's actually kind of exciting for the conference. We have we have Sasha Obama goes to USC. We got a world leader who's actually a Stanford grad, and that makes Stanford and Syracuse the only American football playing schools with G7 world leader alumni, which is kind of cool. So go Stanford. So while we talk about Stanford, we're going to leave a little bit of British flag up there as love for the Cardinal. Now, guys, Stanford has got an interesting game this week, but they had a big win last week. And one of the things that you guys know is that LBC, our very own LGBT Trojan, has been setting the craft beers of the Pac-12. And for their big win, has given Stanford a special one. Now, again, these are not sponsored. LBC is a longtime beer industry executive in the craft beer industry. And so he's chosen one special beer for each Pac-12 team this year. And tell us which one Stanford has got, celebrating their prime minister and their win.
Well, Stanford has got Pliny the Elder. And arguably Pliny the Elder is hands down the number 1 or 2 craft beer in the country. It's an award-winning beer from Russian River Brewing out of Santa Rosa, California, less than 100 miles north of Palo Alto. Kind of like Stanford. Stanford's very difficult to get into, low admittance rate. Pliny the Elder, it's hard to find. Scarcity drives demand. It's only available in 4 states, California, Oregon, Colorado, and in the Philadelphia area. And the only reason why it's in the Philadelphia area is because that's where the brewer and owner's parents live. And his parents were former winemakers in Temecula, California. Now, Pliny the Elder is it's a double IPA, 8% alcohol. And so give it up to Stanford. They didn't get the big win 2 weeks ago, in my estimation. There was other teams that got it, but they did beat Notre Dame. And then they followed it up with a win, basically holding off ASU. And so they've won 2 in a row. So for Stanford, hey, it's a double IPA. This is the beer for Stanford. And it's a well-balanced double IPA with 4 hops. And it's got a blend of malt, hops, alcohol. And it has hints of aroma, pine. So tying in with the tree there. It only comes in the keg. You can find it on tap if you're very lucky, or a 16-ounce bottle. They're different, just like Stanford and their band. So Stanford, enjoy Pliny the Elder. You deserved it. And if you can't get Pliny, well, then find a good friend that can.
Yeah, I'm going to say that it's a pretty good beer. I didn't even know the thing about 4 states. I had it at my local watering hole, and I'd heard of it, right? But I just tried it to try it, but I didn't know it was as rare as it was. But I'll back up this rec and say it's worth having.
Well, great. Raise a glass to Pliny the Elder, to the Right Honorable Prime Minister Sunak of the United Kingdom, proud Stanford grad. All right, another game this week. What a kind of a big one coming up for them anyway. I understand the band is traveling, so they'll probably be at Stanford with the tree. And guys, this UCLA coming off a loss. Certainly on the books, we think they should wipe the floor with Stanford, but Stanford keeps finding a way to win. What do we think is going to happen in this game?
Yeah, so touching on that Oregon game for a second, they scored on 7 of 9. Oregon scored on 7 of 9 drives with 6 touchdowns and 1 field goal. And UCLA had scored on 6 of 8 drives. So both teams didn't score on 2 drives, but UCLA scored 3 field goals and 3 touchdowns. And, as a side note, first of all, UCLA's defense was so bad. It almost gave up as many yards as USC did at Utah. But then the interesting thing that also happened last week is Stanford only kicks field goals, kicks 5 of them, and beats ASU last week. And I didn't know you were allowed to do that in this conference and win a game without scoring a touchdown. That was like incredible. I'll have some more kudos for Oregon about what happened in that UCLA game last week when we talked about Oregon. But I think this week we come back. David Shaw's grin is a little scarier now than it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, but I still think we're the better team. I think we win something like 40-24.
Yeah, I don't think Stanford, kudos to Stanford for not just rolling over, getting the big win against Notre Dame and squeaking that one out last week. But unfortunately, they are not going to have enough firepower. Well, the issue is going to be is their defense. All year long, their defense has been terrible. So with a defense like that, they're going to need to score at least like 40 some odd points, and that's just not going to happen. I really don't see them having much of a chance. I think it's the spread 17 points. I think that UCLA wins and probably covers that.
Oh, UCLA. God, man. Chris, I believe the hype, man. I fed into it. I didn't want to do it. My head said Oregon. It's at Autzen. But you got me on the DTR train, and boy, that one, I bought into the hype. I doubted Bo Nix. I was wrong. I was wrong to listen to you, Chris. But, hey, I did, and UCLA did it to me again. But I gave them the opportunity, and they thought that you could win by kicking field goals, and it just didn't happen. And give it to Dan Lanning because he had a balls-out call, right? That onside kick changed the game, and that's what you got to do in big games. And he out-Chip Kelly up at Autzen. So with that being said, I don't know what the hell to think anymore. It's Stanford, right? They went in and beat Notre Dame. They backed it up with the second win. David Shaw is feeling pretty good about himself. I don't know if I can do it again, but I'm going to pick UCLA in this. UCLA has to win this game because they got to prove who they really are because there's a lot of doubt right now. It's coming from a national level. And but DTR should be fine at home. And, unfortunately, if he has any chance, I think what you said, Chris, of going to New York, well, then he's going to have big games from here on out. But I've got UCLA winning this one comfortably, 42-19. And Stanford's going to be kicking the field goals on Saturday.
I think New York's probably out of the picture, but I think a lot of things that make this would make this a great season are still in the picture.
And Rick, what was that about New York?
Yeah, he was talking about the Heisman in New York. And Chris even sent me an invite on my calendar to watch the Heisman Trophy ceremony. I believe it's on December 11th was the invite because he was going to send me a video of DTR winning the Heisman there in New York. And so, hey, Chris, I know you've already got the night planned with your wife. You've got it booked. So, hey, I'm a solution provider. Since you already got that night booked, go watch DTR, less than 2 miles up at the New York Athletic Club. I'm going to recommend going to Keen's Chop House. Take your wife for a nice dinner down on 36th Street, just south of the New York Athletic Club. And you know what? I recommend the 26-ounce lamb mutton, the mutton chop wrapped in bacon, because basically that's what happened to UCLA. They were sheep. They got slaughtered up at Autzen. So, hey, enjoy that. They've got a fine bar, many great selections of scotch. Scotch is just throw back a scotch, enjoy that 26-ounce mutton chop, and have yourself a good night.
I'm going to have to talk to my secretary. That invite wasn't supposed to go to you.
Oh. Tim, what do you think of this one? Or did you go? You go already?
I already went. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
UCLA.
Okay, sorry, my bad. All right. Yeah, guys, I think UCLA gets this one. I think Stanford has had a wonderful little couple weeks, but UCLA is real good, and I don't think that that they're gonna be able to stick with them. So we'll see. All right, moving on from the Prime Minister's world and Gallagher Steakhouse, guys. An interesting one. Arizona State had been in dumpster fire mode. They extinguished the dumpster fire. Colorado's kind of extinguished their dumpster fire, although they got hit by a freight train last week. What's going to happen up in the mountains when the Sun Devils and their interim coach Sean Aguano come to town?
Do you think they have a bigger crowd in the stadium, which was even full when they played Cal, than they have viewers on TV?
They might well have more people in the stadium.
Because I will not be watching this, but if I'm being very honest with you, but congrats and kudos to anyone that does.
I mean, it's on ESPNU, so I don't think many people are going to be watching it at all.
I will take Arizona State 31-17, and someone else can let me know how it goes.
Yeah. Colorado's been playing fairly decent I use the word fairly decent defense. But Valladay's a stud, behind Charbonnet. I think he's second in the conference behind Charbonnet yards per game. And he's a tough back. I don't think Colorado. Sorry, Colorado. Hopefully things turn around. I think the rebound is gone now and settled back into where they are. Good luck in 2023, Colorado, because I'm not going to pick you the rest of the year. So Arizona State behind Valladay gets the win.
So we got two guys picking Arizona State. This is the Pac-12, and it's Halloween weekend. And this is the Matt Rule Bowl game. Both of these schools need a new coach. I'm sure they would love Matt Rule. I can see him in Colorado. I can see him at ASU. So, and I can see the Buffs actually winning this game. You know what? I was thinking about going to ASU, but I learned my lesson last week, Chris. I'm going to go against you. I'm going to pick the Buffs. I'm going to take the Buffs winning 17-13.
Oh, I like that. Obviously, I like that pick a lot, and I was tempted very, very much also to go with the Buffs, but they're just so bad. So I want to go with the Buffs. Buffs, I'm giving you my spiritual support. But ASU's got my vote. It's it'll be an interesting one either way. Now, another one, not quite Pac-12 team, but they certainly play enough Pac-12 teams that we got to count them because they keep affecting the Pac-12 schedule. The other school with a world leader alum, Syracuse, fresh off a bizarre game, is the only way I think you can describe it, with Clemson, has Notre Dame coming to the home sweet dome. What do we see with this one? Will the Notre Dame dumpster fire return, or will Notre Dame pull a wild upset over Syracuse?
I don't know if we'll have the pleasure of having Will on later to talk about this more in depth. I don't know that we necessarily need to throw them in the fire if they lose to this Syracuse team. I watched some of that Syracuse-Clemson game last week, and Syracuse did enough to make Clemson switch quarterbacks and struggle to do a lot on offense, at least during parts of that game. And we know Notre Dame has had its own struggles on offense. And now Syracuse was on the road last week. Now they're at home. I have a bad feeling about this for Notre Dame, but it's also one of those like weird spots where if Notre Dame figures it out talent-wise, they should have way better people. I could see this going either way. It totally depends. Like, does Notre Dame show up and all of a sudden the talent takes over, or does the really good team that Syracuse is keep them bottled up for another week? I'm going to take Syracuse at home and take them 21-23, something like that.
Yeah, I'm. So here's the issue: Notre Dame is done pretty well against the spread. Like they're like 5-0 against the ACC against the spread. But the problem is with for the Irish is Syracuse also is doing great. They're 6-1 against the spread. I think they did really. I was kind of worried a bit, but I think they moved the ball enough against. I still believe in the one part about the Notre Dame team is their defense, and I believe in their defense and their front seven. They were able to move the ball against Clemson. I think they'll be able to move the ball also against Notre Dame, and just the quarterback play is just still continuing to be pretty bad for Notre Dame. At first, I was leaning towards Notre Dame, but the clear thing here is that Syracuse is a different team at home. And that's what swayed it for me. Sorry, Will. I mean, I was trying to think of all the reasons I possibly could to pick Notre Dame in this game, and I'm going with Syracuse.
Wow, we got Syracuse and Syracuse, and I had to mull this one over. Syracuse is a different team at home, much like Utah, and Notre Dame is in desperate need of another victory. And Syracuse balled out last week, very narrowly losing to Clemson. In fact, they had the lead in most of that game. But credit Clemson for the victory. So can Syracuse continue the momentum? A lot of people have doubted them all year, including the pollsters, national media, and myself. And this is a big statement game for Marcus Freeman and his staff. And I don't have any stats to give you. I just know they got Jesus behind them on this one, and they're gonna shake down the thunder, I think, as they call it. And I see Notre Dame squeaking by the narrow margin of that leprechaun beard, 24-23 Irish.
A brave pick. I thought all about Notre Dame, and they have a way of pulling out games like this. But that dome is haunted. And I was torn. Notre Dame is kind of haunted in themselves. Syracuse, the dome is kind of haunted. What's going to make the difference? Drew Pine is their quarterback. Guys, this is a Notre Dame team that lost to Marshall. Yeah. They lost to Stanford, and they should have lost to Cal. I don't think they go in there and beat Syracuse. I think Notre Dame gets the loss. Syracuse pulls off the win. And we're gonna have to do some welfare checks to make sure our good friend Will ND is okay. All right, moving on. An interesting one. This, guys, Oregon. I mean, everything in the world says they should just steamroll past Oski and the Bears, but we know in the Pac-12 that is not always a good idea. So this game is gonna be hidden on FS1. Is this game ripe for an upset? Could Cal find a way to stun Oregon?
So real quick, I want to talk about how good Oregon was last week. Obviously the better team won last week against UCLA, and their execution was phenomenal against the UCLA D that we've all said has questions all year, and finally those questions got exposed. The onside kick was a great aggressive call. There was one drive where they had multiple 4th and shorts on their own side of the field. And then they had a 3rd and 8 where we had 3 down linemen, just completely expecting them to throw. And they ran the ball fortuitously for a first down, but they were obviously going 4 down territory there on the UCLA 45. And it had all the stamps of the like analytics company that I know that they use, and them just having like a super aggressive mindset and like just a super like we're scoring touchdowns, we're winning this game, we're stealing possessions. They did everything, that they could have to make that an awesome performance on their part. I don't think they necessarily keep that level of aggression this week against Cal, in part because they don't really necessarily need to against the Cal offense that struggles a lot more than the UCLA offense, which despite the fact that we lost the game, I still think we're pretty good. And I still think Oregon ends up, I think Oregon still ends up winning pretty comfortably here, but maybe a little bit closer than what the experts in the desert at Vegas think. Something like 34-20 for the Ducks.
Yeah. I'll admit I was completely wrong. Just like Matt Zemek, if you guys listen to Voice of College Football, he talked about how he, think a mea culpa on this one about how good Bo Nix is. And I was wrong. With that offensive line, there can't be a bad Bo Nix because the dude is never pressured. That offensive line is just phenomenal, like that we knew they would be. They've been stacking that offensive line for a long time. That's what Oregon does. And although I still really think that Oregon's defense is still very, very questionable. If they come up against somebody with a pretty good offense, which is coming down the road for them, that team is not Cal. And Cal, is upset. They upset the Ducks in the COVID year. And then they also beat the Ducks in 2016 when the Ducks, probably the worst season the Ducks had in probably, in a long time, well over past 15 years. And so they were able to get the wins there. I just don't see this Cal offense being able to take advantage of, again, very questionable right now is firing on all cylinders. And I know that Justin Wilcox is an amazing defensive mind. I think these guys are going to play tough. It might stay tight for maybe the first quarter, but all that talent and Bo Nix going off, it's going to get ugly quick, and Oregon wins this game.
Yeah, Tim, really quick to add to your point of like prior years and prior games, it's like we're talking about an Oregon team also that, Cal played them close last year, but this Oregon team also the last 2 years only beat UCLA teams that are much worse by 3 points apiece. And Dan Lanning, despite getting shellacked in Atlanta, has it going, and I think runs a great ship and is very on top of what he's doing at Oregon, at least from what I've seen so far. Agreed. And Mario Cristobal is not walking through that door.
Yeah, and I thought that. Sorry.
No, I was just that's it. It's like Mario Cristobal's not walking through that door. So some of the game management stuff that you would get with Mario Cristobal that would let maybe a better coach kind of hang around with Oregon when they shouldn't, talent wise, is something I'm not seeing from what Dan Lanning did, especially last week.
Yeah, so I pointed out the two losses. Oregon is 11-2 over the last 13 games against Cal, and I agree with you. I think as much as I underrated Bo Nix, we made some jokes. I'm not sure it was you, Chris, or Tony, or Rick, but we talked about this coaching staff. We thought they're a bunch of. I think it was me and Rick and I. We were talking, and we're talking about we got a bunch of recruiters there. But I mean, where's the beef when it comes to actual coaching chops, right? And again, there's also we still haven't seen them go up against a pretty good offense to take advantage. I mean, I know that UCLA is, and they took them to the limit, right, with all those points.
We literally never punted.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's very questionable. But I mean, I really wish I was like we talked about, the field goal thing. But the first punt was basically 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So that shows you that's a testament to two really good offenses, but again, some shaky defensive play. So, but anyway, this one's Oregon, and Oregon probably very, very comfortably after a slow start.
Yeah, looking at this game, historically, Oregon's had some troubles with Cal in the past. They're 3-4 down at Cal since 2006. Historically, but I think, Tim, you brought up the excellence of the Oregon offensive line. I think they've given up 1 sack all year. And if you look across the line, when Cal's on offense, their offensive line is horrible. They're porous. They don't give Jack Plummer a lot of time, and he's slow. He's not very mobile. And I've watched about 3 Cal games this year. They've got talented wide receivers in Sturdivant, Maven Anderson, Latu, but they drop balls. And part of that is, I think, a combination of knowing that Jack Plummer's not got a lot of time because the offensive line doesn't stand up. They're going to make Oregon's defense look good. And there's not going to be any issue with this game. Oregon might start off a little bit slow, but they're going to roll Cal and roll on you Bears, roll on to a non-bowl season. I've got Oregon winning this one 34, Cal 20.
I think that's a pretty good pick, LBC. Gumbylicious brings up an interesting point right there. It says, imagine Justin Wilcox as Oregon's head coach. Guys, Justin Wilcox turned down the Oregon job the night before Dan Lanning got the offer and took it. How wild is that when we look at where Cal is today and where Oregon is today? Cal, there's always in the Pac-12, there are always those upset games. We say every game in the Pac-12 can be a trap game. And this game would seem to be ripe for that kind of upset. But I just don't think Cal's good enough, unfortunately. So I think you guys are right. I think Oregon actually rolls them. And Justin Wilcox has got to be kicking himself that he didn't go home to his native land where he certainly could have had a little bit of different season. And real quick, to everybody watching, if you could just do us a huge favor and help out the Voice of College Football channel, if you could give this video a like and make sure you're subscribed, it makes a huge, huge difference for Mark and for the whole community, because getting those numbers up makes everything to do with how the video gets recommended to other people. So if you could, we really appreciate it. And most importantly, Mark really appreciates it. Next up to bat, LBC, your second winner of the show. In light of Oregon's big win, you gave them the beer for folks to celebrate with. Tell us about it.
Yeah, congrats to Oregon. I believe they had the best win all weekend. Taking it to UCLA, beating them by 15. National television, you had game day there. They showed out. And I want to recommend Great Notion. They're a Portland brewery. This is the super overripe hazy double IPA. They're a newer brewery, and they match up well with Oregon football. Let me tell you why. Look at their labeling. It's neon. It's sexy. They change it up all the time, just like Oregon. And, Oregon is flashy, got the neon colors. This brewery is known for making fruit-forward, hazy IPAs and sour beers and stouts. You either love them or you hate them. And a lot of us either love the Ducks or we hate the Ducks. You decide. But the name is very special. Let me tell you why. I'm a hazy IPA guy. I love drinking hazy IPAs on the golf course before noon because it tastes like orange juice to me. And I don't feel so guilty. But I'm more of a West Coast IPA or a Pliny the Elder type of guy. That's just my shtick. That's my go-to. So, but with this beer, Oregon is a great program. In the last 15 years, in FBS, they have the 6th most wins. And they like to tell you that. But the one thing that really gets to them, if you take a look at the 5 other programs that are above them, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, and Oklahoma, not in that order, they all have multiple national championships. And a few of them actually have multiple national championships this decade. So, Oregon, you are super overripe for a national championship. The 0 is still there. Enjoy the beer, but just know it and drink it down that you are overdue. Overdue. There you go.
Also, O for history. Just to throw that out there.
Enjoy it.
Hey, Doc. Ducks, enjoy your beer. You guys had a hell of a win. Absolutely great for the program. Looked amazing. Friend of the show, Eric Lloyd was there, and it was awesome to see his pictures. And you guys definitely celebrate and go celebrate with the Great Notion beer. All right, next up to bat, guys. Thursday night, Pac-12 After Dark, midweek edition. What do we think? We got Utah playing Washington State. Friend of the show, Dr. Chilton, has the entire school ready for this. I don't know if you guys saw Dr. Chilton, who's been on our show with us. They literally had the entire academic leadership of Washington State urging folks to come out to Phil Martin Stadium. Is this a potential upset for Utah? What's going to happen here, guys?
Yeah, this game's interesting because Washington State's 4-3, but their losses are to Oregon State, and USC, which are not three very bad losses, like in terms of like if you're the teams you're going to lose to, if you're going to lose. And it's Pullman on a weeknight, the week before Halloween is a little spooky for the Utes, maybe. And then the Wazoo schedule, like after this, it lightens up a ton with Stanford, Arizona State, and Arizona before the Apple Cup. So, I still think that they're easily going to be a bowl team, even though they're 4-3, the way things play out down the road. Wazoo's like sneakily one of the better defenses in the conference. And it's interesting because the spreads, I think it started at like 9, it's gone to 7. So it seems like there's some people out there that think Washington State has a chance to hang out in this game. I think it's not going to be very pretty up there. I think it's going to be weird, but I think Utah holds on off the back of things like Cam Rising just being a much better quarterback than Ward, and Whittingham, being a lot more experienced and just taking care of business. Again, I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think it's going to be a hairy game, but I'll take Utah 28, Wazoo 21.
Hi. Yeah. So Washington State was was one of my favorite teams, and they've come down a little bit down to earth recently. But part of that's been just kind of the inconsistency of their play, especially their play on offense. And I would like to see Cam Ward. Unfortunately, Cam Ward's usually running for his life, throwing the ball over the place because of that offensive line. So this game with Utah, I've seen personally as a USC fan, I've seen what Utah does. I also remember the Pac-12 sending a really good because Utah was favored to win the Pac-12, I believe, this year. And I remember them sending a favored USC team to go up on a Thursday night up to Martin Stadium, and it didn't work too well for us. I just think that Utah is just too much on both sides of the ball for Washington State. Washington State's made great strides, and I really love what they're doing. But and I'm sure Henley will be all over the place making tackles. That guy's a stud on the defense side of the ball. But this is just, again, too much of Cam Rising doing Cam Rising. Utah wins this one.
It's going to be a great game. Thursday night, tomorrow. Excellent. Maybe this is going to be one of the beer choices for next week. The winner of this one. I can feel it. You've got Cam Rising and Cam Ward. And yes, I think Utah's a 7-point favorite in this one. They're coming off a bye week, both coming off bye weeks. We know the craziness in Pullman. I just got a weather report in Pullman. It's going to be, 10 to 15 mile per hour winds, a low of 49, but no chance of rain or sleet or hail. But it is Halloween weekend. Crazy things happen. The difference is going to be, I think, turnovers. And can Tavion Thomas run the ball for 100 yards? I don't know what's going on with him this year, but their running game is just not what it's been when you think of Utah. Is it because Kyle McDonald's no longer there and he's at SC? I don't know. But their running game is just not there. They're going to need to run the ball, Utah, and play defense. And Cam Rising he can't make mistakes like he did at Florida and on the road at UCLA. But Cam Ward, Washington State's quarterback, he's prone to make mistakes as well. So whoever loses the turnover battle is going to lose this game. I like Washington State at home. I like Utah as a football team with Morgan Scalley as the DC, Kyle Whittingham. They're tough. This one's a tough decision. I've looked at both angles, but at the end of the day, man, Cougar love. I'm going for it. Cougs 31, Utes 27.
LBC, I love that pick. And Dr. Chilton, friend of the show, I'm sending you my love. But this is another one that I want to pick the Cougs. I want to think they can do it. In my heart, I believe they can do that. But I think Utah is just too good. Zach T, thank you so much for your support of the show. We really appreciate it. And Mark really appreciates it. Thank you very much. And I think you hit it spot on. Utes pull away and cover in the fourth. Go Utes. That's Zach. You've nailed my prediction exactly. So thank you for doing it, and thank you for supporting the show in the process. And yeah, you guys, the folks that think Wazoo's a super dog, I'm telling you, this is when the Pac-12 gets wild. Is those weeknight games up in the Pacific Northwest? It's going to be cold. It'll probably be foggy. It'll be something else. But yeah, I just think Utah's got too much to handle for them. All right, guys, another very, very different type of trap game coming up here. Actually, hold on. First, we got David Knight, friend of the show, has got also a super chat. Thank you, David. We really appreciate that. Does it seem like the Pac-12 is up their level of play across the board? Maybe 2 or 3 teams haven't, but in general. I'll tell you my thought and then want to hear what you guys think. I think yes. David, one of the things that has happened in the past year and a half is that all the Pac-12 teams, when George Kliavkoff took over, got a talking to. And we're told, you need to take football seriously. And I think a lot of them have. The Pac-12 kind of, in the Larry Scott era, waffled. And I think, guys, sometimes like you wait until something gets to be too bad, and then you all of a sudden have to make a massive adjustment. Well, that happened to the whole conference. I mean, in only 3 years, and I think I'm right on this. It could be off by 1. In only 3 years, I think we replaced 7 of the 12 coaches. And if you add in there, it might even be more. It might even be 8. And you add in there, Whittingham's been there forever, and David Shaw's been there forever. And you only have like 1 or 2 coaches that haven't been there forever and aren't brand new. And that is because the conference has decided to up their game. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree with David?
Yeah, generally there's no Georgia or Ohio State or insert your favorite, playoff team here in this conference right now. But by the time you get there, you're going to be in the Big 12 and Big 10 anyway. No, there's 5 teams off the top of my head that you're, top 25, top 30, 4 of which can all beat each other and are all top 15 in the country, somewhere in that like 7 to 15 range. And then after those top 5, you still have Washington and Washington State, who are very good teams in their own right, probably top, I don't know that off in front of me. I would imagine they're probably somewhere around top 40, top 45. The conference is a lot deeper. It kind of drops off after that a little bit, if I'm being honest. But there are plenty of really good really good teams and good coaches in this conference. And it is much improved compared to the last 2 or 3 years.
Well, thank you. Anybody else?
I think Tim's unmuted.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. It's been beat to death by the media, right? Rising tides lift all boats, right? Blah, blah, blah. But there is some truth to the fact that I think that this league really just took the whole parity thing too far. And it got to the point where there really was not a lot. The level of coaching and led by our fearless leader, Clay Helton, the level of coaching in this league really took a glut. I think Washington State fell into a great thing with Dickert. I think that I'm going to be proved wrong I'm thinking over a long haul about Oregon and Lanning. I think that there is actually a hot seat, but I thought never would be for Shaw, because they got to do something, or they're just going to bail and Stanford do their own thing. But I mean, I even think looking at the play and then obviously Chip Kelly getting a team and playing better. I think they're getting rid of. It's a huge sign, right? Getting at ASU, looking forward to getting a better coach. Colorado, the league is saying, okay, enough of this crap. That we want to be competitive. We need to start improving. Like you guys, like you said, Tony. The call went out saying, hey, look, you guys want to be laughed at, or you guys going to get seriously and it all starts with coaching.
Yeah, it does start with coaching. And you can look at the top 7 in the Pac-12. Top 4, Oregon, Utah, USC, and UCLA. They're in the top 15. And then you have Washington State, and Oregon State. They're fighting it out. And you have Washington and Washington State beating middling teams, historically better teams than this year in Michigan State and Wisconsin. Wisconsin's blown out their coach. Michigan State's just a year removed from, 11 wins? And you look at how the Big Ten is this year. They're down. They're historically a good conference, but come on, we got Iowa and Northwestern. Do I need to say any more? I mean, basically, they've got the pitchforks out for Kirk Ferentz, but he's got offense from 1955. It's ridiculous. But you look at the Big Ten, for example, that's a 2.5 team conference out of 14 schools. You got Ohio State, Michigan, and you got Penn State when they show up. When Jim Franklin decides to coach, 75% of their fan base don't like James Franklin. But it's all down to coaching. And you look at the job that Jonathan Smith, DeBoer, and who am I missing here? Dickert are doing with those middle teams in the Pac-12. They're rising. They're coming. So it's an exciting time for the Pac-12. And nobody really knows what's going on with the Pac-12 because it doesn't get respect. We all know that. But you'll see.
All right, now back to the games. Guys, this one has typical Pac-12 upset written all over it. We got an evening game at dusk in the desert with the sun setting behind the mountains. What do we think? Is there any chance Arizona can get USC?
Tony, I'm really glad you started talking about the trap game angle here because I have a bit to say on that. So I think the USC guys, speaking after me and Tony's already started, they might tell you that Jaden Delora is this exciting quarterback at Arizona and he has playmakers, and it's kind of true. And, they might say like, oh, Arizona is going to hang around, or if SC doesn't play up to their level of play, then, it could be a trap game. But if they try to tell you it's a trap game, I want to let you know that they're lying. The Arizona defense is terrible. They held Washington to 79 rushing yards, but that's only because Penix threw for 516 through the air. Cal, who I recently was told from a graduate of that institution that will remain nameless, is playing varsity football with a JV line. And they still had Jaden Ott go off for 1 billion yards. So SC should win 1,000-28. And if it's any closer than that, they should be embarrassed and they should just stop playing because they should dominate.
So let me talk about those guys on Arizona.
1,028, okay. And if it's less, stop playing. Chris, that is the quote of the day so far.
So there was a big quote on Twitter popping around. Everyone knows that Williams took that loss really big, and Caleb kind of shot back by saying we got punched in the face and we're going to get back up and go punch someone else in the face. I think that tells you where this game's going to go. And I think that it's going to be USC's offensive line punching the defense for the Wildcats in the face. I mean, props to McMillan and Cowing. They're amazing. They're going to continue to be amazing. And Delora is, amazing. I've been hearing people talk about the fact the only way that the Wildcats win this game is if USC starts turning the ball over and Delora goes off. Like Chris, I'm not going to say that's going to happen, but to simply say there's absolutely zero, what was 1,000 to 28. I don't think it's quite going to be that one-sided. It is an away game. USC still hasn't shown me that they can go somewhere on an away game and just wipe teams off the planet. But if there's any team that really matches up the way USC wants and tees it up for USC, it would be this game. I think Dye does rush for 200, north of 200 yards this game. I think Williams probably add another 50 to 100 himself. And if they can keep that vertical passing game in control and keep the big plays away from the Wildcats, I think USC cruises in this game. But I've been watching Jaden Allure for a long time, and the guy can play. He can move. He can throw. I don't think we blow them out like people think, but we will cover the 14 points for sure. Is it 15 and a half? No, I can't remember. And pull away at the end.
Guys, we have a chat from an Arizona fan. Arizona defense equals Iowa offense. Yeah. Sorry, just had to point that out.
That is beautiful.
By the way, sorry, really quickly, and this is Caleb Williams' chance to get back in that Heisman race for legit. He's going to put up big numbers, I believe, in the next 3 games, and his numbers will be hard to overlook.
Viewers in the chat, thank you for tuning in, and I just want to inform you that before we came on, Chris said he was fine with he's over it. He wasn't really too concerned with the UCLA loss to Oregon. But I'll have you know, his emotions came out, and he projected them on USC, and he put shade on USC to deflect from UCLA because his Bruins had a bite.
What shade? I predicted you to win 1,000 to 28.
Oh, you were. Don't let him tell you it's a trap game. You were just, you were laying it on thick. UCLA had a bye week, and look what they did up there at Oregon. USC has a bye week right now, and I think David in the chat is right. Arizona doesn't really have a defense. In fact, they should be called, instead of the Wildcats, they should be called the 49ers, because 3 teams this year have put a 49 on them: Cal, Washington, and Oregon. And I'll tell you right now, USC is going to put a 50 burger on these guys. And it's not going to be pretty, because we are going to go punch them in the mouth. And we're going to roll in the desert. We're going to show what a top team in the Pac-12 should do after a bye week. Yes, Chris, I said it. It's going to be 50 to 17 Trojans.
There's a worry, though, because they might be looking ahead to Cal.
Well, I'm sorry.
That trap game with Cal, looking forward to Cal, looking ahead. I don't know. It might be a trap game.
All right. In the chat, Georgia Reload asks, does the Pac-12 have upsets? Oh, yes, they do. That is actually one of the hallmarks of the conference, is the upset. However, I think you guys are right. Arizona's defense is way too much like Iowa's offense. I think USC gets this right back on the winning trap. And sorry, Jed Fish. I'm a big Jed Fish fan. I'm a Fish believer, but this one's going to get ugly.
On that upset note, just if I can ask a quick question, since I think we all picked the same way on all 3 games of UCLA, USC, and Oregon, who are part of that, top 4 with Utah. Of those 3, where I think the closest spread is 15.5. It might actually be this game. Which one do you actually see as having the most likelihood of having that ultra chaos Pac-12 shocker that we haven't really had so far this year?
I can tell you, I think it's Utah.
That if I was accepting that one from the 3, because I think that one's.
Oh, you were saying USC, closest. UCLA. Then I go for UCLA. I go for Stanford and David Shaw finding a way to do it. I don't think it's going to happen, but of those 3, of USC, Oregon, and UCLA, if I had to pick one upset, I think I think David Shaw and that annoying as heck slow mesh offense finds a way to make it work. I don't think it's going to happen,
right?
But if I had to pick one of the 3, it'd be that one. What about you guys?
If I had to pick one, it would be Oregon at UCLA.
You mean
Or
Cal?
I'm sorry, at Cal, mainly because Oregon's on the road. They have lost there in the past, but I think the coaching is much better. That's why I just don't see an upset. But if I had to pick one of them, I would pick that one.
Right. I don't see it either, but I agree with you. I think that would be like the most Pac-12 thing ever in the world if that happened.
It really would be.
You know, like the team that everyone thinks the best in the conference now loses the team that lost to Colorado after its big win.
Well, and I mean, guys, there's also a very real concern with Bo Nix and the snap counts in Berkeley, because his counts, as it echoes off the empty seats, it might like cause him to jump off sides. So be careful on that. Be careful on that. Sorry, Tim. Which one do you think?
Yeah, and I agree with you guys. I just don't. I just don't see it in the other two, but I don't see it in the Oregon Cal game. But if you're going to ask me, of those three teams, which one has the biggest pulse? You know, where they could just make something happen. Maybe Wilcox pulls out some magic. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Bo Nix gets hurt. Right? Who knows? Because that's the only way. That's the only way I see any of those teams being any of those three.
Yeah, injuries could throw anything up into chaos.
Well, no, I mean, I think with I think with UCLA, Stanford, because Stanford's so damn horrible, I think you could lose DTR in that game. I do think that USC could lose their core, but I don't think Oregon's the same place. If they lost Bo Nix, I think their season really goes down fast.
I think you're right, Tim. That's a really good point. All right, while we move on, real quick, guys. 3 shows that are in the queues and on the channels that we really think you guys should check out if you haven't yet. If you guys get a chance, we had our live chat with the USC Trojan. So the USC drum major, Jacobo Herrera, just absolutely phenomenal guy. You know, it's really something. Rick set that up, and it was absolutely one of the more special things we've done here on the channel. So if you get a chance, that's definitely something to check out. And then as well, if you have seen that, we hope you should also take a look. We did an interview with the Stanford Tree. You know, as Stanford heads to UCLA, he actually talked about that game and how excited he is. So get to know the Stanford Tree. Really, really neat guy. And then last but not least, something just absolutely phenomenal. Really, really incredible time we had talking with Dr. Elizabeth Chilton, the chancellor from Washington State. Just incredible leader, brilliant anthropologist. And really gave us a perspective on what it's like to actually run a university, which was really cool. So, guys, moving on just a little bit, let's take a look at how we've been doing. We've had standings have changed on our picks. So,
Before you do that,
yes,
we're also looking to find a few more special guests. But hey, this is the viewers' Pac-12 shows just as much as ours. So, if there's any special guests that you would like to see, please drop a message in the chat, and we'll consider those and see if we can get one of those suggestions on the show.
And especially if you have connections or somebody, anybody who's like, oh, I'm on the board at someplace. I talked to some regents from Michigan the other day. We'd love to talk to Dr. Santaono. Anybody certainly. If you have connections, certainly let us know. All right, so we get into our scoreboard. So, in first place or last place, we have Rick, 16-11. Rick, you took some hits. Sorry.
Yeah, that happens. That's the Pac-12.
It's a Pac-12. It's a Pac-12. That happens. Next, in third, myself, 17-10. Yeah, guys, Stanford got me a couple times. I did not believe in them. That's part of why I say if there's another upset, it's going to be it might be them. Number 2 in second place, charging from last place to number 2 with some brilliant picks. Tim. Nice work, Tim. Picking them well. What's your secret? Tell us. To come from behind.
Picking everything that Rick does, and then when he goes crazy, when he goes rogue, then pull off of that and use some sanity. That's what I do. I cherry pick Rick, but when he goes rogue, when he goes off, then I go, okay, I'm out, Rick. I can't do it anymore. That's what saved me.
I like it. I like it. And in first place, Chris continues to smoke us all, even despite taking a hit from the Bruins last time.
The Bruins and the Bears, Tim, I gave you the gift. The charity picking of Cal and upsets is over. And from here on out, you're going to have to earn it.
The Bruins giveth and the Bruins taketh away.
The Bruins giveth and the Bruins. That's great line.
If you want to just copy my picks for the rest of the year and then have it right on UCLA, USC, well,
that's what's been. If you look, you've missed, I believe, on Cal and UCLA, and then we all missed on ASU, I think. But when you've been wrong, it's been on UCLA and Cal. But it's also helped you early in the season. We picked against UCLA, UW, and you picked them. We picked against UCLA, Utah, and you smart enough, you picked them, and that got you that lead. But that's why I said UCLA giveth, and UCLA take it away.
Take it away.
I've only taken away once, so it's okay. I'll take it.
True.
It's true. And as David AZ points out, no one expected Colorado to win a game, so that's fair. Oh, guys, so that's fun. Now let's take a look at our power rankings real quick. And then, guys, after the power rankings, we want to hear what you guys have to say. So somebody can put, and we already have a couple people waiting in the back, but if somebody can put in the chat real quick, we'll put the link in there. But we want to hear what you guys have to think. So our power rankings, interestingly, guys, there were some changes. But at the same time, we stayed in our 4 little groups. So those groups were Colorado in dead last place. Guys, is there anything Colorado is going to be able to do to rescue itself from dead last?
Yeah, they're going to beat ASU.
Hope for a meteor to hit one of the stadiums. Although, wait a minute. No, that's to leave them in last place. Sorry, I take it back. So, no, there's no hope.
They're going to beat the Devils.
All right. I like that pick, Rick. That's brave. So now that next bottom 4, we've all picked both San Francisco teams and both Arizona teams. But we have a lot of differences. So Tim and Chris are putting ASU at the top. Rick's putting Stanford at the top. I got Arizona, that porous defense. Arizona, don't let me down. What do we think about these guys? Who's in the next? Who's the second worst?
That's it's the Forrest Gump box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get. I mean, I got Stanford at number 8. They're the tallest pygmy. Because, hey, they got a 2-game winning streak to beat the Irish, speaking of pygmies and leprechauns. And then they took down ASU, So David Shaw feeling good about himself with the Fighting Trees. Yeah, put him at number 8.
Until Arizona can show me that they can stop anyone, at least somewhat, not even like fully stop, but just kind of stop. Like I just have a really hard time picking them against anyone to win a game, and I just struggle. I mean, Arizona versus Arizona State, I have to look at their schedule again close, but like I have them at 11 because I really struggle to see them beating. They lost to the 2 teams right ahead of them in Cal and Stanford, and they still have ASU left to play. I can't see Arizona doing much. That's why they have them at 11. Unfortunately, even though I think Jed Fish has them on the right path, it's not quite there yet.
Well, I see Stanford charging, right? That charge is more like a little whimper. And stopping Notre Dame's offense isn't technically stopping, I think, anybody, right? If you know what I mean. So they're just for whatever reason. I know Arizona's defense does look bad, but for me, when I watch Stanford's defense, I'm just like, my God, what are they doing, right? So I have them on the bottom just for that particular reason alone. And then I thought their offensive passing game would be a hell of a lot better than it is. It is what it is, right? And then the rest, I mean, you could almost flip a coin. I don't see Stanford beating Cal, Arizona, or ASU. That's why they're there. And just right now, I see Arizona State. I think they just have the best defense of the group, which isn't saying a whole lot, but they are refocused. And listen, it's amazing what. Sorry, someone help me his name because I always butcher it. The Arizona coach,
Sean Aguano.
Yeah, that guy.
He's doing great stuff.
He's really refocused them, and I don't know where they go, but he's done a great job of turning that season around for them.
All right, should we look at the next one?
Let's do it.
The Pacific Northwest. We've got the other 3 P&W teams next. Guys, you have picked Washington, Oregon State, and Wazoo as the next three. I believe in the Dogs. The other three of you believe in the Beavs. Any quick hits here before we get into the Big Four?
I am a Beaver believer, and I do think that they can sneakily sneak up into that 4 by the end of the year, depending on how that happens and how we might talk about them at the end of the year. But we'll see how that goes with Washington to start off. 6 and 7, I think, are a little bit more interchangeable, in my opinion. I think you can put either 1-6, either 1-7, and I really wouldn't disagree with you,
Chris. I think you're right. That Apple Cup's going to be a heck of a game.
Yeah, and I put in the chat, but when I was talking about the coaching upgrades over the past couple of years, it's really not a couple of years. This is his 5th year up in Corvallis. I'm a huge Jonathan Smith fan, and what he's doing, what he's building there. And I've told you, Tony, privately all the time that schools like Washington State and OSU, I think nationally have done more with less over the years than any other program, in my opinion. And they are solid. Their 2 losses are to USC in the last moments of the game, and in Rice-Eccles. Those are 2 really, really, if you want to call it, good losses. You know, if you're going to lose at Rice-Eccles. If you're going to lose at the last minute to, you know, a pretty top 10 USC team. So I'm still on OSU, and going forward, I'm looking. It's gonna be amazing. The Apple Cup and the Civil War, those 2 games are gonna be insane. I think those are amazing. Probably those 2 together in the same year. I can't remember last time we've had that kind of a matchup from all 4 of those schools in quite as long as I can remember, actually.
All right, you're right. All right, should we look at the Big Four?
Let's do it.
All right, number 1. Guys, we all saw those Ducks look good, so we got no real discussion there. Now, number 2 gets a little more interesting. Tim and I threw the fight on. Chris threw the A-clap, and Rick stuck with the A-clap. Rick, tell us about your A-clap vote.
You know what? I guess I'm just still on that DTR train. UCLA beat Utah, so that's what I'm considering. Yes, they went and pooped the bed up in Autzen, but UCLA is still a good team. They're very solid. They also beat Washington, and we have, Washington is I've got them as a top 6 team. You have them as a top 5 team, Tony. So they have 2 quality wins, and so that's why I have UCLA where I have UCLA.
I like it. And then a little more interesting on our kind of that other mix of who goes where. I put the Bruins above Utah for their win. Rick, you put Utah. You got Utah above USC, and the other 2 of you have Utah there, number 4.
Let me tell the viewers out there that I am not a USC homer. I'm a Trojan. Love the Trojans, but I am not a homer. I am, objective. I'm a college football fan. And so when USC is rolling well, I'll talk good about them. When they're not, I'll call it out. That's how I am. And I'll do that about my program and every other program. So when I do that about your program, hey, if you want to get in a tizzy fit and get all upset because you're not mature, that's cool. That's okay. Show your age. But that's what college football is about. I enjoy talking smack and having fun. And I'm going to talk smack on my Trojans when need be. So that's how it is.
Here's my rationale behind. There's no homer going on here. All 4 of these teams have a lot to prove on the defensive side of the ball. All 4 of these teams are prolific offensive teams. All 4 of these teams on a neutral field are going to have a hell of a game playing each other. The reason why I have Oregon right now at number 1 is because they have the most impressive win. What they did to UCLA, albeit at home, but what they did to UCLA, to me, is the most impressive win. Utah's win over USC, I'm not going there again. We've already covered that a couple of weeks ago. I'm not talking about that one again. But Utah is a great team with a great, and all these teams, every single one of them have a great quarterback. Yes, I called Bo Nix a great quarterback. I've come one full circle on that. So why I had them ordered in this order is on a neutral field. I'm just thinking Utah. Is it the Devin Lloyd effect or whatever? Their defense doesn't seem the same to me. And of all the offenses, I think that they're probably the when it comes to offense, I think they have the worst offense of the four. But they're all like this on a neutral field. It would be really difficult to pick. I would love to hear Chris when you give yours. I know it's kind of early and last second, but if you could throw out what you think, because I really value your ideas. What do you think who would be favored? On a neutral field between these teams.
Between which two? Between UCLA and USC, or
I know I get your power ranking, but I'm curious to hear for you. What do you think the Vegas odds? Which one, if you throw them out there, who would be?
USC would be favored. USC would be favored on a neutral field if, like, based on all the models that all of those people look at when they're starting their lines and whatnot. Like, SC is just generally higher. I think matchup wise, I mean, I think that game was like an absolute shootout, right? I don't know how much it's by, but I think, like, if we're talking about like purely Vegas, I think Vegas has SC favored in that game. And I think you would be favored against Utah on a neutral field, and I think you would be underdogs to Oregon.
All right. Thank you. All right, guys. So we have a whole bunch of callers. This is exciting. This is more than we've ever had at this point in the show. So we're going to get to everybody, we promise. We'll try to go fast, and we often do. Starting off, because friend of the show actually helped support the show earlier, let's welcome David Knight. David, welcome to the Pac-12 Chat Show.
Hey, thank you. It's an honor, you guys.
Hey, David. Welcome.
Thank you. Hey, if you don't mind, I had a question to ask. This is a USC question, okay? I'm 59, so I've been watching football where I really started catching on a little bit, like 71, 72. And when, Notre Dame would play USC, it was like always like, like we had already knocked that off as a loss, right? But, man, USC always had great defensive linemen, put a lot of offensive linemen in the NFL. Well, the running back list is phenomenal, right?
Yes.
And then if you take that a step further, great wide receivers, great skill position players. And I still think that USC has the skill position players. But at what point in time and I'm asking this as a question, where the offensive lineman and defensive lineman prowess kind of fell off a bit?
Well, they definitely fell off in the Clay Helton era.
Okay.
I mean,
and actually one of the areas that I think, and real quick, and then you guys chime in as well. I think one of the things that really hurt them was the depth that we lost during the sanctions era. Do you remember during the sanctions era, we lost 30 scholarships. So we were playing with 30 fewer scholarship players than everybody else. And of course, USC being a private school, some of the public schools actually have a little easier time during sanctions because they can bring kids on. If your parents have decent money, they can bring you on as a walk-on, and make it. But like at USC, the tuition is so exorbitant that you can't. It's hard to do that. And I think that we started to lose it there under the sanctions, and then we never really got it back under the Clay Helton era, which was certainly kind of a dark time. What do you guys think?
Oh, you hit it right on the head, Tony. When you add the dysfunction that was going on post the NCAA sanctions, no other programs from outside of the Pac-12 would come and try to recruit Southern California while Pete Carroll was here. Then the sanctions hit. You had Kiffin did a great job until the 30 scholarships went into play. And then you went to Sark and Ogeron, and then you went to Helton, and you had a lot of schools such as Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama coming in here and recruiting Southern California. And we just didn't have the depth. And you can see that now. We don't have the depth, and that's an issue. And that's why I'm not, hey, if for some reason we make the college football playoff, we're not ready because we don't have the lines like you're talking about, David, when we were very, very successful and would go in school SEC teams under Pete Carroll, where Alabama wouldn't pick up the phone. But we don't have that type of program right now, a la Clemson, with a great defensive line. We just don't have that in the offensive line. But those days are coming. They'll be here close. With the way USC is playing now, we are already having a great offensive line recruiting class in 2023 and beyond. So,
as a non-USC person, I'll give a really quick answer to is that like West Coast line recruiting, I think is in terms of the talent in those classes, I think has been down over recent years compared to what it is historically. And then to the point that Tim and Rick already made, you're having schools come into the West Coast when recruiting is way more national, I think, than it's ever been. And I think this is true for the entire conference as well as SC. But I think you have schools coming in, taking talent out of California that not to a way greater extent than they did 20 or 30 years ago when of those like great teams and great players that you're talking about historically.
And USC, here's the biggest issue, and I've heard it. This isn't it's nothing novel. If you're a USC fan, you've heard it before. You have a situation where first the NCAA, kneecapped those draconian sanctions were absurd, but then we started self-sanctioning, and then that's the problem. When you start self-sanctioning yourself, we had a steak appetite on a cheeseburger, budget, and you can't compete with Ohio State. Most of the SEC schools, and even Oregon. Oregon did a great job with all their money. I'm seeing comments about NIL. I'll look at you as well, Oregon. There was really an organized effort up there in Oregon. They had the facilities, they put the money behind it. And the problem is USC kept thinking they could just win off of name and past history alone, and that clearly wasn't the case. Helton was able to win on some of Sark started fixing that recruiting situation, if everyone remembers. But and Helton did well, fed off that for a couple of years, but then it just dropped out of nowhere because they weren't recruiting the lines, and it has been a struggle to get those big guys on the West Coast.
And Rick, thank you, and Tim and Chris, let me ask you this: for the West Coast teams, do they ever get into a position where they recruit like those offensive linemen and defensive linemen in other states, other than like say? There's Washington, Oregon, California, because, I'm guessing because, I like joining your show because I'm trying to learn, right? I'm in the Midwest and live in Indianapolis. So at that point, like, we don't get exposed to a lot of your athletics. And my question is, do they recruit outside of those three major states? Do they go after guys – like you could say like around where I live, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania got the offensive linemen, right? Do they actually go to recruit them in an ardent manner?
Well, they often do. It depends on the coach. It depends on the school. It depends on the year. It depends on the players. So USC has traditionally recruited nationally. I'll tell you another school that's traditionally recruited nationally was Washington, because Washington, under Don James, and actually going back to the 1950s, part of the scandals of the 1950s came because Washington was having to pay kids out of Chicago and out of New Jersey and everywhere like that to come play for Washington. It's how they built the Huskies into an empire up there. So they do recruit nationally, but at the same time. I think they try to, if they can get it at home, keep it at home, kind of like Texas does. But they certainly have recruited nationally, particularly for the more powerful teams.
When Pete Carroll was rolling, he was keeping the best of the Southern California kids and going into New Jersey, Ohio, all over the place to get the best at Florida. But how do you Florida out? Yeah, no. When USC is healthy, they recruit nationally. They have the benefit, unlike some schools, some other powers like Ohio State, I know they got to go out a lot. I know obviously Notre Dame's got to do all over national recruiting, right? Because they don't have an LA, they don't have a Miami, right? They don't have a New Orleans in their backyard. So when you have that, you can lock down your neighborhood and then go out and cherry pick all the great kids. But you got to win to do that, right? You got to show stability and winning, and that's two things a lot of Pac-12 teams haven't been able to do outside of Oregon and Utah lately.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Is UCLA traditionally, like, if we've been good or had some national cachet, yeah, we'll go out and pluck kids from. I mean, Soso Jamabo or whatever didn't turn out to be very good, but like Moore had recruiting classes where he's picking a 5-star running back out of Texas. Roquan Smith, who has a great career in the NFL and ended up going to Georgia, literally had UCLA football gloves on national TV, committing to UCLA. Like, we plucked this star linebacker out of Georgia. Granted, he didn't actually end up coming to us, but like, there's examples of us doing it when we have the ability to. And again, the way Chip recruits, if we call it that, is a little bit different than prior regimes anyway, where I don't think we're necessarily going for those kinds of guys regardless. But historically, yeah, if we've been good and we can do it, then yeah, we'll go out and get people. But as of lately, no.
Yeah, and as Jason Osborne just pointed out in the chat, Dwayne Jarrett and Brian Cushing were total New Jersey guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, New Jersey is kind of a spot where people kind of sleep on, but they have, put some good players for a lot of different programs, like Minka Fitzpatrick. I can't reel them off right now because I don't have them memorized, but yeah, New Jersey's a crazy place for different teams to recruit, and
you get high schools like Bergen Catholics and National
That's
Power.
what I was going to say. I'm sure Notre Dame cleans up in Bergen. That's where Cushing is from, but Bergen Catholic. I'm guessing that Notre Dame might be doing okay over there.
Hey, but let me, for the 2023 recruiting team rankings, if it's okay, I'll just run this down real quick.
Sure.
So I'm going to roll down to the Oregon's ranked at number 10. I know a lot of things can change in between now and signing day, right? It's always a little bit of a gambit that you roll into. USC is ranked number 14.
You might find us when you get to the 80s.
I don't know. Come on now.
No, I'm not lying.
No, they're down there.
Snuck in there at 18. They've got one 5-star running back, like the best running back in the country. I'm not sure how they locked that up, but
Ruben Drones.
Whatever. Washington at 28, Stanford at 30, and Utah at 41. Like, okay, I'm gonna get out of there. But when you look at that, like, and I hate to say this, man, it broke my heart when USC and UCLA decided to go to the Big Ten. Like, that just goes against everything I grew up with, because I want them to stay in the Pac-12. I think it's good for college football when the Pac-12 is vibrant and alive.
Yes.
Hey, David.
Well, we didn't start it. We got to remember, it was SEC and ESPN that pulled. Think about this. We now have Texas and Oklahoma playing in the SEC. That's just as weird to me as USC going to the Big Ten. Seeing teams that's a traditional power. Teams like A&M and also Arkansas. But I mean, those two teams going over to the SEC is kind of weird to me. But this is just an arms race. It's not about any tradition anymore, right? It's all about big TV contracts and big money. And Fox had to counter. Fox and the Big Ten had to counter what the SEC and ESPN did, and that's just what it's all about now. And it sucks so much about the game. The running clock now that they got rid of, so they can fit more commercials in to pay for those big contracts. I mean, all this stuff's a little bit just sad to see.
Well, thank you, David. We appreciate it. Anything else?
You're
really
always
quick?
a great supporter of this show, and
we love having you in the chat. Thank you. Call in more often.
The last question I would ask, and I'll jump out here so other people can get in. Kind of, Tim, I'm rebounding off of you. Do you think money has perverted the sport that we love so much?
Incredibly. It's just accelerating, right? I don't know who it was, but someone in the 80s got that big contract and really stopped the NCAA from the revenue sharing. Who was that, David? That was the Irish. They were the ones that got their contract. It's got to get the ball rolling, David.
True, it's true.
But yes,
Hey.
it's just money runs this sport, right? These guys, these gigantic cathedrals with grass aren't built off of nothing, right? So it's what's built the sport, but also I think it's what's really for you and for a lot of it's what really taking away that special. I remember growing up in the '80s and watching games. It just doesn't have the same flavor anymore. But you know what?
Yeah.
Adapt or die, right? It's just life.
It is.
Yeah. Okay,
Hey,
man. Hey, thank you for having me on. God bless.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, David. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Hey, we also want to give a huge thank you to Georgia Reload, Go Dogs, who's also a good friend of the show. Georgia Reload, thank you very much for that support. That $20 super chat helps Mark's channel a ton. Thank you. We really appreciate that, and so does Mark. And Clayton, we lost some folks. Sorry, we're having a couple little StreamYard issues here. We're gonna get folks in. Sean Garner, welcome to the show.
Howdy.
Hi,
How's it going?
Oh, pretty good. I'm just excited to join on. I'm not a Pac-12 guy, but I called in a few weeks ago. Just as
We're glad to have you back.
I really enjoy all your banter, everything. So I talked with Mark about this on the Saturday episode, and I'm wondering, I don't know how much you guys care about getting into the playoffs. We're talking specifically how this would affect Oregon, but I guess it could affect USC or potentially UCLA as well. How much does that opening week massacre in Atlanta, just how much of an albatross is that over the league right now?
I have my take, which I think is maybe a little bit different.
I can tell you what I think. And what one of the interesting comments that John Wilner made is he thinks that as far as getting into the playoffs go, it would be a massive albatross. I mean, because of course, I think the caveat to that is, of course, what happens to everybody else? Know, how many losses do everybody else have? But yes. I think his point is that, and I agree with him, that if it's at all close to all things equal, it just hangs there like a huge albatross, because you cannot make a coherent argument that Oregon deserves another shot, or it was almost. I mean, Oregon's a way better team. They're a totally different team, but they got shellacked, and I don't think they get another shot.
I think that I don't know if I necessarily entirely agree with that, and maybe I'm crazy, but I think that if Oregon, obviously it depends on what happens with the rest of the conferences, what happens with Clemson, what happens in the SEC, with how many of those teams end up getting in. But I do think that if you're magically sitting at the end of conference championship week and Georgia's the 1 seed and Ohio State's the 2 and Oregon's around 5, and the weekend breaks the right way and Oregon is all of a sudden should be the 4 team because the 4 loses or whatever, and you're looking at it, and they'll just I think they'll find a way to put the Buckeyes up at number 1, avoid all this talk about the rematch and the shellacking, and they'll give Oregon and Ohio State a game, and then people can maybe Ohio State does the same thing to them, but it's at least a different game and they can avoid the narrative. And if they do beat Ohio State, then certainly they deserve to be there. So I think if Oregon deserves to be there, depending on what happens in the rest of the country, I think they find a way to make that narrative go away and not be quite as strong as it was.
Yeah, and as much as I've championed the whole, it's the first game, which I believe all that. I believe Oregon plays a hell of a different game if they met today, especially on a neutral field somewhere. I think that do they win? I don't think they win. But it's a totally different narrative, right? If they play it again. But it also has to do with, what does Oregon do? Let's say Oregon just crushes, I'm just saying hypothetically, crushes Utah, crushes who they else out there. They crush Ohio or Oregon State on the road, and then crush a USC in the championship game. Under that scenario, a one loss, and they're crushing everybody. I do think they get in, because I think the teams I just named prove. The problem is that they've never the selection committee has never let somebody in that's lost by 46, whatever they lost by. That wasn't just a loss. That wasn't even a beating. That was kind of embarrassing.
Merciful 49-3. Like that. That could have gotten. Georgia could have named their score in that game.
But historically, they've also.
I will push back because we're talking about the national champions against a coach in his very first game, new quarterback, new coordinators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and which is pretty much a home game for Georgia. So I get it, and they got their asses kicked. But we all know it takes games for these kids to learn a system at game speed. Well, they're at game speed now, and they would give them a different game. And here's why I have the problem. I don't think they beat Georgia, but I think a lot of teams that might get into the playoffs don't have a chance against Georgia either. No. So if we're talking about resumes and this and that, one game should not define it. It's weird is one big win gets a lot of teams in, but one big loss can throw them out completely. I think they need to take it and look at it. But it doesn't matter because USC is going to beat them in the championship game anyway, so it's solved.
And how many times has a one-loss
but USC might still be affected by this, though, because if USC wins this game, the whole league, I think that game is kind of an anchor, an albatross around the entire league right now as far as
No, I don't think so. Here's why.
Let me chime in with him. Sean, you bring up a great question, and do you believe it's an albatross around the whole league?
Yes, and I say it like this, that if it comes down to, say that the top three teams are some version of like Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan, we just kind of all put them in there. And it comes down to a fourth choice between someone like a one-loss TCU or a one-loss Clemson or something like that. And I think that the committee is just going to look at that game and say, well, we'll give someone else a chance to get murdered here. No one wants to see the same team or the same league get
murdered again.
Get murdered.
Well, if TCU, here's the thing. If TCU, I don't know the schedule. I have it in front of me. But if TCU, hold on a second, Rick. If TCU, right, or loses a game, or Clemson loses a game, they aren't playing anything with a pulse. So my point is if they lose a game, they're gonna have a really bad loss. And USC's only one loss is to Utah on the road on a 2-point conversion, getting screwed out of 2 really bad calls. And when I say bad calls, I mean literally handing the team 7 points. So I don't see how. So under your scenario, how many teams? Who's getting in? You said there's one spot left. Who are the 3 to get in?
Well, I mean, it could be any seed. Just imagine there are 3 teams that are locks.
That's what I mean. But I mean,
imagine there's 3 teams
from the.
I'm a big
if you have a one-loss team from the Pac-12, and if it's like a one-loss UCLA or a one-loss USC, let's forget about Oregon for right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to put a team that didn't win their conference in over, I get it. When the Pac-12 sucked, I get that, But when you have this is a good Pac-12. I don't care what anyone says. Our top 7 teams could play with pretty much any top 7 in the country, maybe outside of SEC. To say that, we're going to put someone who didn't win our conference in over a conference champ, one-loss conference champ at USC, or one-loss Oregon even, or one-loss UCLA, I think that's crap. Sorry.
Okay.
Because we already know they lost.
And guys, we have one other opinion that I want to get on this real quick.
Right. I cut off Rick. Hold on, let's go back. Sorry, Rick wanted to say something, and I cut him off.
It's fine. We can move on.
All right. Let's get a real quick view on this as well from Exploring with Ben, who's been waiting in the chat real quick. Ben, what do you think? Would Oregon get another chance?
No, number one. That's all I give a shit about at this point. No, I actually agree with everyone's comment right now. I agree. One, could Oregon, if they run the table, could they have a shot? Yes, likely, probably not. It does hang over your head. That it was a bad loss. That was a bad loss. But this team is not that team.
I agree.
And the Pac-12 is good. And no divisions now. So we either have a rematch with, say, UCLA. If we get to the championship game, we'd have a rematch with UCLA probably, or USC. You could be looking at a number 5 versus number 7 type of matchup. But I think what you said, Tony, the Pac-12 in general, I think it needs a little chaos to happen above us for any of the teams.
I think you're right.
But I have no complaints. This team has exceeded, to a degree expectations. So I'm like,
I love it, Sean. Real quick, we're trying to. We got a lot of folks waiting. Absolutely. Anything else, real quick?
No, nothing much. I just want to say it's good to see the Pac-12 back to life after the last couple seasons. It
was rough,
and unfortunately, it might go with the USC and UCLA stuff. It might go back into the abyss. But I mean, I'm really enjoying this. This has been a really fun conference to follow this year, and give me a lot of entertainment while I'm battling insomnia on a Saturday night. So.
Hey, Tony, let me just respond. Hey, Sean.
Yeah.
What I wanted to say is, and you brought up a good point, kind of the national narrative with Oregon losing that first game. Yeah, it was a bad loss, but let me show you the other side of the coin. Again, Dan Lanning, that was his first game as a head coach. He's got to go on the road to play in Atlanta against the national champions. Okay. Mm-hmm. Did that game fracture Oregon moving forward? No, it did not. And actually, they've gotten stronger. So credit to Dan Lanning, his coaching staff, his ability to keep the culture going and do an outstanding job. Look at the new head coaches in the other conferences and look what they've done. Brian Kelly, he lost his first game, okay? Mm-hmm. He also got boat raced at home by Tennessee. Mario Cristobal, you lose at home to Middle Tennessee State and Duke. Do I need to say any more? Look at
Freeman.
Marcus Freeman. Yes, he loses to Stanford and loses to Marshall. Okay,
sorry,
that's a new coach the first time. Who else can I bring up? Oh, there's a guy in Oklahoma that replaced Lincoln Riley. Brett Venables, defensive coordinator for a couple national championship teams at Clemson. I mean, they started off Big 12 0-3. Okay, they gave up more than 41 points. They lost 3 consecutive games. So, what Oregon did the first game, yeah, that's a bad loss, but you have to give credit to that coaching staff and that team for actually being stronger. Look at these other new coaches. That's all I got to say. But don't be a sheep and don't follow the national media and this lazy narrative they're going to have, because that's true. That's what they do.
Yeah, one last thing. I just want to say one last thing before I catch out. Both Tim and Rick have brought up like really excellent, nuanced arguments for why that loss maybe shouldn't be fatal. I'm just not sure. I have no confidence that the committee itself will really dig that deep in analyzing this.
I agree with you. I
think you're right.
I applaud I thank you for your compliment. That's very nice.
And thank you for calling. We're glad to have you. Call back again next week. We'd love to have you back.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Hey, while we're talking Ducks here real quick, let's add in Mikey G and we'll go. We got a lot of folks waiting, so we'll go do kind of like Duck turbo time right here.
Tony, this is great. We go from fighting to get people to call in. And now I keep getting that thing saying you're full. You're full. So
I know you guys we've been
on here. I don't think
we're usually desperate to get folks to call in, and now we're overstuffed. It's not letting folks in. So if you're trying to get in, just keep trying, and we will try to go faster. So real quick, guys, Duck Power Hour turbo time right now.
Let's go, Mike.
Welcome to the show.
What do you guys want to know? Because I could talk for hours about Oregon football, especially off this last Saturday. So, I mean, do you want to talk to the CFP? I don't want anything to do with the CFP, honestly. Like, I think that the fact that we're in the conversation again is somewhat a good thing, but it's also kind of ridiculous, right? Because as everybody's already noted, that first week, regardless of all the alibis that we have, and they're legitimate alibis, the SEC is not going to have any less than 2 teams. And then you're talking about an Ohio State and a Michigan. And then the at-large is probably Clemson. And, you know, if we end up making it to the championship game or the Pac-12 championship game and we win, you know, that's a different conversation. Ask me then if I think that we should go to the CFP. But, you know, I can't be happier with this staff than I am right now.
Here's a side question on the playoff thing, and then we can talk about how great Oregon is. And as a side note, I'm happy as a UCLA fan that we're good enough that it makes Oregon this happy because that means we're actually relevant. But on a side note, on the playoff note, is there anyone on this panel that would be, if they won the conference championship, would be upset? No, like if you told them at the beginning of the season, oh, you're going to the Rose Bowl, are you upset about that outcome?
No,
I'm still throwing roses in my path, celebrating.
Yeah, it was like
that
what LBC was saying.
Exceed our expectations, I think, as Duck fans, that would exceed our expectations. So
yeah, as has Lincoln Riley for USC. LBC put it perfectly. Like, you've got so much opportunity to fail when you install not just new head coaches but new systems and the like. And we are the anomalies. Lincoln Riley has done a phenomenal job. I think that count me as a skeptic in week 0 when I'm talking to Tim and he's talking about a 10-2 season. I'm like, bro, like, you guys are 4-8 last year. And that was kind of the common narrative, right? Like, and I understand the energy and the excitement because all of the pieces were falling into place, but it's very rare to come off of that kind of season year prior and look at a 10-2 or even a 9-3, I think is a success. So,
well, I'd love to take credit for that, Mikey, but I would say 8-4 before the season.
Oh, well,
I'll take it. If you want to give me it, I'll take it. But I didn't.
No. I'm just saying, like,
I 8-4.
Maybe it was another USC guy, but essentially, in fact, I bet you I know exactly what it was. It was Matt Zemek. Is that Trojan Wire guy?
Well, I'll tell you what. You might not like him, but he's right more than he's wrong. I'll tell you that right now.
You know what? I can't fault him for his his confidence and all that stuff. But the thing that I would say that, obviously anybody listening to an opposing, perspective, let alone a rival, you're going to take everything with a grain of salt, right? And that's definitely true with Matt. And he has a lot of, I'd say, skewed perspective when it comes to Oregon. Like, we were in the same situation trying to rebuild with our new staff. And he kept on using that as the excuse as to why we're not going to do well. And he's talking about how USC is going to, be on a rocket ship. And so that was the main issue that I took with Matt, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, I'm happy for your guys' success.
Let me address that if you want to say that. In Matt's defense, you have a first-time head coach with Tosh Dupoy, who's not known for X and O and people out of games and stuff. Your staff, it wasn't the greatest staff. Lincoln Riley, on the other hand, has only lost 2 games a season. He's been double-digit winner 5 straight years. I think that's what he was basing it on, Mikey.
Well, so okay, that is a fair point. However, the thing that was missing in a lot of the outside perspectives of this Oregon staff, I think, was, yes, you're right. Lincoln Riley has a proven track record, but every other hire other than Carlos Loughlin and maybe really Kenny Dillingham, who, I think that I counted him as a experiment more than, somebody that was going to do really, really well. He's been calling lights out. You guys have seen it. But the thing that was very clear by the time that we hit the spring game is that they were hitting on all cylinders, not just in recruiting, but all of the things in the player reports and just the energy level was just it was a huge contrast to what we saw in the previous 4 years that you couldn't help but be excited. And the thing is like, you're talking about Marcus Freeman.
I lost you. Well, to follow up what you're saying, we didn't see Bucky Irving coming out of nowhere and being just amazing for you guys. We knew your offensive line has been everything we thought they were going to be. And again, I'm here and many other people are saying, wow, we were wrong about Bo Nix. So, and I think Dillingham's did a good job, but yeah, I mean, what can we say? We all should be very happy with where our teams are right now. I don't think anybody here going all the way down to Washington, to Oregon State. I think the Pac-12 has showed out, and we've shown them this is what we are as a conference. That crap you saw a couple of years ago, that's not the norm. That's just something weird. Problem is college football thing is that's what the Pac-12 has always been, and they're insanely wrong about that.
Yeah,
I love Chris's I love Chris's comment right there. All cylinders, but lost an accident in Atlanta, but got the car fixed.
Yeah, I think we lost Mike. But I mean, I agree with everything that you guys have said. And, us Ducks, I've argued with you, Tony, especially, and Tim, a bunch. I think me and Rick see a little more eye to eye. We're a little more neutral, but I've argued with you guys. This is the love-hate loss between USC and Oregon. But I agree with Mikey. It's like, look, that Georgia game should have derailed this team, and they did. But I'll take a Rose Bowl.
Well, and I'll tell you something.
I'll take a conference championship Rose Bowl or a runner-up in a Rose Bowl or a Cotton Bowl or something. I'll take that all day long. It'll exceed expectations, and I will be happy with that. And sorry, TBM.
So real quick, one of the things, my dad's a football coach, and so I grew up with football games and seasons over years and years and years. And the one thing I remember, I don't know if you guys remember, we talked about it a little bit, is I thought with this Oregon loss, so a lot of times it's easier for a team to come back from just getting shellacked, because you just sort of pick yourself up and you say, okay, well that was a mess. And sometimes it's easier than a gut-wrenching or a heart-wrenching loss. And so I think it made it easier. Hey guys, we have a ton of folks waiting. So one more topic we want to do on Oregon real quick from you guys, and then we'll move on to some others.
All I gotta say is, hey, Chris, we can talk and be friends again now. It's okay. It's okay. But we're number one. We're number one in the conference right now, so we'll take it. We'll take it for this week at least.
I love it. Thank you, Ben.
Congrats, Ducks.
Yep. I don't have anything else. I mean, we got a lot of football left. Obviously, Utah. I'll be at that game, and it's the Pac-12, like you guys said. All bets are off. Like Cal, we're going into Berkeley this week. That's not a guarantee by any stretch. And I like the way that we finished. This past weekend, but at the same time, like I always temper my expectations, and whenever they're exceeded, I'm a happy kid. So go Ducks.
Let's go Ducks. Hey, Mikey, thank you for calling. Call in next week.
Mike, one last one. I got a question for Mikey. Mikey, are you a craft beer guy?
Oh, of course.
All right. Have you heard of Great Notion Brewing out of Portland?
I don't think I have.
Okay, well, you got to check them out, man. I had a recommendation for you Duck fans to celebrate your victory over UCLA. Super Right IPA. It's a great double hazy, 9.1%. Check it out.
Okay, yeah, if they got a storefront, I'll definitely go hit them up.
They've got 5 different fronts in Portland. Check out their website, Great Notion Brewing. I'll post it on my Twitter.
Awesome.
We have it on the screen right there.
There you go. There you go, Mikey.
Hey, thanks, Mikey. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. See you.
All right, bye-bye. All right, guys. Hey, while we still have a ton of folks waiting, so let's do another double up. In fact, let's not only double up, let's double up the two of the best right now new college football streamers going who are waiting in our room. We've got Will ND and Jeffrey from Only Talk Sports. Guys, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here.
So, first of all, Will, you're Irish. We missed you. You were at probably at your practice. Talk to us about real quick before we get into your questions. We want to hear from you. Tell us Notre Dame and Syracuse. Give us the 1 minute summary.
Well, if we play like we did in UNC and Ohio State, I think we'll win. If we play like we did against Stanford and Marshall, no shot. If we play like we did against BYU, 50-50. So we just got to play like we did against the best teams that we played.
Hey, I'm the only one who picked you this week, just to let you know.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick.
So I have this funny feeling that Jesus is going to lead you guys into the dome, and you're going to beat the Orange and continue your season rolling. So get that message to Marcus Freeman.
Yeah.
You guys are only 2.5-point dogs, right? I mean, it's not like this is a decide. I think you guys have an absolute shot in this game.
Yeah.
You just got to get that ball in the end zone. Don't kick those field goals. Ask Chris about that.
Yeah, when you lose a game and you never punted, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
No fumbles from Roderick Estime. I love him, but please don't fumble the ball, little bus.
Turnovers will kill you in the dome.
What do you think, Jeffrey? What do you think about the Notre Dame game?
Well, oddly enough, I just made a video on it, and I'm just going to say that I think a lot of people are sleeping on Notre Dame. Like I said, I made a video so you can check it out or whatever. But, I mean, I think Notre Dame has had a rough season compared to their standards. But I do think that Syracuse has gotten lucky. They shouldn't have beat Purdue, obviously, and they probably shouldn't have beat Virginia. So those two probably could have been losses. And if they were 4-3 right now, and even NC State they could have lost to NC State if Devin Leary was healthy. So they could be 3-4. And if Syracuse was 3-4, nobody would be talking about Syracuse at all. So that to me, that's the big key that nobody's talking about. And I think that Notre Dame, like Rick was talking about, like you said earlier, that Notre Dame is a lot more talented than Syracuse. The records don't show it, but Notre Dame is much more talented. If their talent shows up, then they will beat Syracuse.
The one thing that worries me is that Syracuse has a habit of injuring other teams' players. And with our two biggest games coming down at the end, I'm just worried about no skill players getting injured. Please, no skill players.
The game in the Pac-12.
What do you guys think about the other? Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I was just going to say the game in the Pac-12 that I'm looking forward to the most is Utah-Washington State. And again, I made a video on that as well, but thanks for watching it, Rick. But yeah, that game's got me like Thursday night, it's 10 o'clock. It's just sneaky FS1. It's just a sneaky game. Man, my thing about Utah is like you guys always talk about, Utah is a much better team at home, kind of like Syracuse, and that is the caveat to that game. Syracuse is better in the Dome. But I agree 100% that Utah is a much better team at home, and they do struggle on the road. But Washington State has been kind of iffy. I mean, at times they look like a pretty decent team, and at times they don't look like a really good team. So if Utah plays like you guys were talking about with the experience of the coaching staff versus Washington State having an inexperienced coaching staff, and plus Cam Ward is very turnover prone. I think he's way more turnover prone than Cam Rising. I think if Cam Rising plays well, I think Utah is going to squeak out a win. And I do think, to agree with Rick's point as well, I think it's odd that Tavian Thomas has had a rough season compared to what he did last year, because last year he was one of the top backs in the country. He only had 28 yards against USC. So if he runs better against Washington State and Cam Rising plays like he did against USC, they will beat Washington State.
Hey, I kind of piggybacking on the last Oregon callers. You guys are young college football fans. I love your passion. Keep doing what you're doing on your shows. The question is specifically about Oregon, is that Georgia loss too much of an albatross? I think whether it's Oregon or any other Pac-12 team, let's say hypothetically finishes the season 12-1. Watch the college football playoff committee, because this is going to be, get your popcorn ready, because you watch how they're going to dink and dunk and exclude the Pac-12. It'll be a fun show to watch, but I'm sorry. This Pac-12 conference, it's this year. It's not historic, okay? And if you're a 12-1 champion in this conference, and right now you have 4 teams in the top 15, I'm sorry. I don't care what anybody else says, but that'll be a show to watch. But they will exclude the Pac-12 because they're already putting out the narrative before this first college football playoff show next Tuesday night. It's like, okay, here's the stain on Oregon. Basically, that excludes the rest of the Pac-12. You're all infected. BS. So
I think that the Trojans or the Bruins might get in just because they want to.
Okay, I've seen this movie.
Because there'll be more eyeballs on the TV, especially.
Well, here's a hypothetical. Hey, Rick, and panel, what do you guys think of this? So, Oregon gets beat in the first game of the season by Georgia by whatever it was, 46, whatever. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but you guys are saying it can happen. What about a one-loss USC that beats, let's say, Oregon? I don't know. I don't see it happening. But let's say they get the championship game with one loss and they beat Oregon by 24 points.
I don't think the score matters. I think a one-loss USC has to Colin Cowherd will be yelling every second of every day about how you should be in the playoffs. Like, there's no way a one-loss USC doesn't get there. I mean, granted, we're all assuming a bunch of things with like a bunch of unknown unknowns as to what happens with the rest of the teams, but it's like very, very rare. I think, at least, I mean, I could be wrong, but like, I think it's fairly rare for a one last conference champion by the time the end of the season happens to get left out of the playoff.
And not only that, one of the points John Wilner made, I thought really well, Chris, I don't know if you guys read this or not, but was that one advantage USC has is, and UCLA had it too, but doesn't now, but is that they're sort of saved from the stain of that Georgia-Oregon loss. And that as long as USC doesn't lose to Oregon, that they are sort of almost like purified of that stain as far as the national media goes. And and we, of course, we all agree that it's a very different Oregon team now, blah blah blah. But we know that stain is there, and so he pointed out that for the Pac-12, maybe the best thing is to have a team, win out that sort of is purified from that. And by the way, that could also be, if Utah beats Oregon at Autzen and wins out and wins everything else, that Florida loss might be more forgivable than that Oregon loss.
I think that, again, I talked about this last week, but I still think that week one really screwed the Pac-12 over, because in week one games in general screw teams, because if Utah does not have to play Florida in week one, and say it's later in the year, or they don't play them at all and they just play an easy non-conference game in week one, they only have one loss right now. And they could still win out and maybe make the playoff. And Oregon would be undefeated right now if they didn't have to play Georgia. Or if they had to play Georgia like 2 weeks later, it would have been a closer game more than likely, and the loss wouldn't have been as bad. I think that having the week one games against tough opponents like that just isn't fair. I know why they do it, as I've said before, is because of money, and they want to bring viewers in. It's the beginning of the football season. You have these big games, but no team is at clicking on all cylinders in week one. Sometimes one team is and the other isn't, but most teams are not in the first week. It takes time to get going. I mean, you could even argue, sorry, Will, but Notre Dame probably would have lost to Ohio State by more if it was later in the season, because Ohio State only put 21 on them. And Ohio State's on all cylinders right now. In Georgia played Clemson last year in week one. That game was 10-3. And people are like, oh, Georgia's not going to win it all. They're not that good. They barely beat Clemson. It was 10-3. Their offense is terrible. They win the whole thing. Week one games are not indicative of how good a team is. These games should not be played, in my opinion. I do not think that these week one games should be played. You should have easy opponents for the first couple of weeks and then play tougher opponents. I know why it's not done that way, but it should be.
That's a great take. I like it.
And there's another element of that, just to follow up on that, is I think you're right, Jeffrey, but I think either everybody should play real games or nobody, because like playing the Little Sisters of the Poor Nunnery doesn't help you.
Or is this the point where we also bring up the fact they play 8 conference games and some play 9 conference games? I mean, there's a lot that goes into all of this stuff. I'll leave it at that. But
and then
people forget about Utah lost and how they lost. All it is now is a Utah loss. Utah, again, it's a loss. Florida won. But literally, they're on the doorstep on 2nd and down, and Cam Rising throws like probably the worst pass of his career. I mean, that game, they went to the swamp, and they should have beat them in the swamp, and we wouldn't be talking right now. It's not like Florida like solidly beat them. You know what I mean? They really beat themselves. So yeah, it's just right. It's the narrative, and it fits the narrative until the Pac-12 can turn it around. They're not going to get the benefit out on any of that stuff.
I agree with you on your point too about the 8 versus 9, because obviously, I watch a lot of Indiana. It's like they would benefit from an 8-game conference schedule, because it's tough enough for them to make a bowl game as is. They're not a good team. So playing 9 conference games, and then you have 3 non-conference games, and usually one of them is always a decent team, then it's almost completely impossible for you to make a bowl game. I mean, I've seen South Carolina make a bowl game, and obviously they're much better this year, but in the past, make a bowl game at 6-6. Obviously, they do play Clemson in the non-conference, but they win 3 easy games, and then they beat Vanderbilt and Missouri, and then they find one other win, and they make a bowl game. They're not really that good, but they make a bowl game. And other especially the ACC, most notoriously, tons of teams are making bowls at 6-6 that aren't good, and they probably shouldn't even make a bowl game, but they do because of the fact they have 3 guaranteed non-conference games, 1 probably average to maybe tough non-conference game, and then they find 3 wins in conference. But it's just much tougher when you're not a good team and you have to play non-conference games. It's a lot harder.
It is. All right, guys, we got to quick move some other folks in. Anything else real fast?
Definitely excited for that Washington State Utah game though. That's gonna be a good one.
Good one tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think they're gonna win, but it's excited to see like how good Arizona has improved against USC. Like I want to see if they can hang in it for a half. If I had to put money on it, probably not. But I don't know. I'm also a Jed Fish fan. I do like Jed Fish.
So Will, do you not believe Chris's assertion that if the score is not 1,028 by halftime, that they should just stop playing football?
No.
SC should be SC. If SC doesn't score 5,000 points, they should be embarrassed.
Deflect.
I like it, Chris. Hey, thank you guys very much. Guys, Will and D and Jeffrey, their channels are down in the description. Absolutely do fantastic work, especially when you guys see them together. They knock it out of the park. Thank you guys very much.
See you.
All right. Next up to bat, let's bring in 2 more good friends of the show, Larry Pilgrim from Utah and David Greenshield. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Good evening.
So we've got and to the other folks in the chat, we're getting to everybody. We're going quickly. Sorry, we're trying to breeze through. So guys, first of all, just because it was a game we were just talking about, what do we think of Utah?
Well, I was just going to start by saying that, well, first of all, Utah's lost a little bit of luster for me because, well, number one, I picked them to make the playoff at the beginning of the year. I don't think I was in the minority on that. I think there were a lot of people riding the Utah chain. I believe Tim picked them to win the Pac-12 at the beginning of the year. Most people on this panel, I think, picked Utah to win the Pac-12 at the beginning of the year, if I'm not mistaken. I like Cam Rising. I was expecting a little bit more out of Thomas, the running back. I agree with you guys. I'm a little bit partial to him concerning he's a Dayton guy. I thought he'd be a little bit more productive this year. I like their coach. I thought Clark Phillips was, like most people, going to be one of the best corners in the country. But right now, I'm going to ride him this week. I was checking out that line. I think I've had so much luck with Pac-12 overs this year that now I'm going to bet the spread this week. So I'm going to flip it around. What do we got? What'd you guys say? 7.5, 8.5 on that game?
It's 7 now. It opened higher, but it's moved down.
Okay. By the way,
it opened at 8. It went to 7.5, and now I don't know what it's at. Okay. It opened at 8 when it opened. So
I think Utah wins the game by at least 10 points. So I'm fairly confident in that one. I think they're a little bit better, just more back on track now, maybe than they were a little bit earlier in the year. And I like them by at least 2 scores in this one.
The only thing I agree with you. The only thing is again, Thursday night. So Thursday night, short week, Thursday night on the road. And, getting to Martin Stadium is not the easiest thing to do. So that's some traveling and some issues to get.
It's not a short week. They're both coming off of buys.
Right.
Oh,
they haven't. Yeah. So it's not.
I didn't know Utah had a bye. Oh, they did, huh?
This Oregon team that we're all falling in love with did have some trouble in Pullman, though, too. I do think that I do think that Utah wins, and I think they do it off the back of, just straight-up better quarterback play. And there's some things about that Oregon game that made it a little bit closer than it probably should have been.
Oregon should have lost that game in Pullman.
Well, that's both of you guys, you got to realize, to my pick, I'm adding in the Coug effect. So if they are winning, they're going to Coug it, and then I get my win. So you have to factor that in. You guys, come on, the Sharps do, right?
By the way, did you say that the president from Washington State that you interviewed was Dr. Chilton? Yeah, I saw The Silence of the Lambs for the 80th time the other day. That was the doctor in that movie.
Oh, was there a Dr. Chilton in the movie? Oh, that's
Yeah,
funny.
when Hannibal said at the end of the movie, "I'm having an old friend for dinner," that was Dr. Chilton.
All right, don't tell her that. Don't tell her that.
So
Yeah.
She made a great video though. I don't know if you guys saw it. They actually did. They had their whole senior leadership team, and Jake Dickert came in and did a pep rally in the middle of like their senior leadership board meeting, and they told everybody essentially, let your students out early so they can go to the games, which was pretty cool.
So I wanted to bring up another point and like the lunacy of the CFP. Let's not call it a CFP. Let's call it an invitational. It's not a playoff. It's an invitational. It's not a playoff. The committee has already said, and they've held to this. So this 11-1 runner-up conference runner-up does not get in over a 12-1 conference champ. The committee has already said a conference champ is rewarded before a runner-up, and it's been proven every year. So this talk of the 11-1 3 SEC team crap is just it's crap. It's not happening.
Can I make a point on that? I threw that out to Mark Rogers last night, and I said to him, if TCU goes undefeated, do you think they get in over, let's say, an 11-1 Tennessee team? Or let's say Georgia loses the SEC title game like they did last year to one-loss Alabama. Do you think that TCU gets – I mean, and he kind of paused for a minute. He was like he wasn't sure, when I said that. And I actually think that the Big 12 is slightly better this year. Well, actually, maybe a lot better this year than people thought he was. By the way, I was also trying to make the case, Tim, you caught it last night, that you guys, as a one-loss USC, should get in over a one-loss Clemson, by the way. If Clemson stubs their toe and you guys end up, 12-1.
I just don't see Clemson losing, do you?
South Carolina, maybe. They've been playing close with everybody. It's not like they're boat racing the ACC like they were in years past. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
Remember the year they boat raced Alabama in the national championship and they had 4 games that they almost lost?
Yeah.
And then they just boat raced everybody in the playoffs. Like Dabo, I don't get it. Dabo, I don't know how Clemson does it, but I've watched them almost lose to nobodies. And then they boat race Ohio State and Alabama.
I don't have a crystal ball, but I've watched college football enough to know that teams that are supposed to win lose to teams they have no business losing to all the time. And we talk about all of these teams as if they're all going undefeated. And I don't know who they're going to lose to, but some of them are going to lose to somebody.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I just want to say Mark agreed with me, and I don't think the chances of TCU going undefeated are very high. I will say that. I think somebody will clip them, but just throwing it out there is obvious hypothetical.
If TCU plays a game where the quarterback doesn't go down on a decent team. Kansas State, they probably would have lost that if the QB didn't go down. Right. And then I watched that game. Kansas State was up 28-10 with their backup, and then he went down, and that was it. Game over. So I think TCU's a really great team, but I think they'd have 2 losses if the QBs didn't go down. So,
and lucky against Oklahoma State too.
Yeah. And then also I wanted to bring up, I actually was in contact with my contact that's on the coaching staff of Utah. And I didn't know this. I just found it out today. Utah tried to run the same defense on USC that Oregon State did. Because I looked at that game and I went, how did we, go? I mean, Utah scored 15 more points than them through the last 3 quarters. It was 21-7, and it ended up being 43-42. So Utah went on a run, and he said, so what they did is they tried to run the same scheme that Oregon State did. And we have sophomores. The whole defense is sophomores. Most of those guys only played last year. They were freshmen all last year. So I have a feeling the defense is actually going to be good. And also, guys, I wanted to bring up another point, and hopefully, did you know the last 2 times we played Washington State, we had a pick 6 to end the game, and we lost a player from our team after we played Washington State the last 2 times. Is that just not creepy or what?
It's the back. It happens.
What we played Yeah, we played Washington State, and one ended on a pick 6 by Clark Phillips, and Ty Jordan, passed away that year. And then last year we played them. The game ended with a pick 6, and then Aaron Lowe was murdered that following night. So hopefully that trend ends.
Yeah. No, that's for sure.
Anyway, I just think the defense is going to come up. Cam's going to do Cam things. Dalton Kincaid's going to do Dalton Kincaid thing. And also LB, to bring up Tavian Thomas, I don't know if anybody knew, his aunt raised him, and she passed away 3 weeks ago.
Oh, there you go.
So he's having issues, basically he lost his mother in a sense.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly
off the field. Yeah.
So they're keeping it kind of in-house what's going on. But anyway, so
hey, Tim, I wanted to ask you, what would you say the line was on USC Arizona?
It was 15 and a half,
15 or something.
Yeah, it's 15 and a half, and the total is a whopping 76 and a half.
I'm thinking about that.
I would not do the over on that one.
No. I'm looking more at the line than the over, Tim. I think you guys can cover that.
We got to move some other folks. Anything else from you guys, real quick?
Hey, last thing, you guys. Maybe we talked about this before. I know you guys keep on putting out the 12-team playoffs, and I just want to get everybody, because we talked a little bit about the playoffs. I'm an 8-team playoff person. I just want to know: are you guys more 12-team or more 8-team, or even more teams? Just
hashtag 8-team. I've been that way the whole time. Yeah.
I'm a 0-team playoff guy.
Okay.
Go Utes, and I'm going to take the USC first half points. So I'm with Chris. It's going to be 1,000-1.
I'm actually the plans that I loved were the ones that were 32 teams with conference tournaments built into them. So I say 16, 12, whatever the highest number is, I'll take, because quite honestly, I think that adds a lot more to the sport than the Meineke Car Care Bahamas Poulon Weed Eater Independence Bowl.
I am more of an 8-team playoff guy myself. I don't know if I really like the buys, but I'm open to something that maybe is against what I prefer. Like first when I heard Tony's idea, I really didn't understand it, but funneling in the conference championships into a larger bracket, I can see that as well. I'm just glad that it's something different than the 4-team. And they made a decision on 12. So,
well, last thing, real quick, just to make my final.
Move on.
Go ahead. Real quick point. No buys. All major conferences represented, and even those SEC folks who want multiple teams can still get multiple teams because of the at-large, and you can cater to non-Power 5. I think it's a win for everybody at 8. Just always wanted to say that.
Yep. I've always been on that same boat.
Right on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with that. But I think the more the better. I agree with you guys, though. I don't like the buys. That's why. But I also think that there's no way to stop the incessant SEC autofellatio whining, and so add a few more so that their whining can stop.
I hear you.
I never thought.
No whining.
Hey, exactly. Whining. Hey, thank you guys for calling in. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Pleasure, gentlemen.
Hey, Larry. Good luck to your Utes. It's gonna be a good game.
Hey, good luck, guys.
Thanks, guys. All right, that was fun, guys. We got so many great folks. I love this.
It's incredible.
Next up to bat. Oh my gosh, wait, we lost. We had somebody else who was waiting. We lost. If you were waiting and you call back, we'll put you back in right away. Sorry about that. Next up, we got Zach from Utah and great friend of the show, Joey Foster. Joey, welcome.
Hey,
this
thanks
is
for
your
having me
first time
on.
in the Pac-12 show.
It is. It is.
Thanks for having
you. I'm real interested in the Pac-12 this year. You guys looking pretty good out there. So, anytime. I just wish the hell your games wasn't so late so I could stay up and watch them. But that's okay.
Well, Joey, our games won't be too late for much longer, so don't worry.
Well, I'm going to talk about
that being the Trojans, not the Pac-12.
I wanted to talk about one thing real quick, and that is, a lot of people are pushing this weekend aside, saying, well, there's not any great games, but I tend to differ. I think it starts Thursday night, Virginia Tech, NC State, and I'll tell you why here in a second. I'm going to list some games for you here this week and
Are
tell you
they
why
in-
I think
are
it's
they in
going to
the
be great.
Pac-12, Joey?
Michigan State, Michigan, West Virginia, TCU, California, Oregon, Louisville, Wake Forest. The reason why them games are so great is because it's the bottom of the conference playing the top end of the conference. And there's going to be upsets. There's a lot of that this week. I mean, there's a lot. So there's going to be some upsets. And I don't know which teams it's going to be, but, is West Virginia going to upset TCU? That's possible. I mean, it's at Morgantown. Can Virginia Tech upset NC State? Not likely, but I guess it is possible. There's just so many top end of the conference playing the bottom end this week that I think it makes for just as good a games as if you're playing the two top teams in a conference, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there's gonna be Joe. You're right, because we're ripe for some upsets too.
Yeah, the Mountaineers be the top of that.
Zach, what do you think? Is the your Utes, are they in danger?
I kind of agree with what you had said earlier. I think it'll be a good game through 3 quarters, and then the running Utes run away in the 4th quarter. I think Cam Rising is just going to be a little too much for Washington State's defense at the end of the game. And let's not forget, I mean, Washington State, like you said, is a very good team. If I remember correctly, Wisconsin was ranked number 11 to start the year. Obviously, things have gone downhill, but that was one of the biggest upsets to start the year was Washington State. I think it was week 2 or week 3. Went into Madison and took care of business up there. So obviously, Wisconsin's kind of fallen off the trail, but they're very good. They're a pretty good team, and along with everybody else in the pack, I think there's 6 or 7 teams that can beat anybody on any given week, which is why I think the Pac-12 may not have all the elite teams yet, but at the same time, week in and week out, great football all the way around.
Yeah, I want to say something else too. And this is the main reason I came in. Everybody in the chat, these guys right here that are putting this show on, they work really hard to do this. I mean, it takes some time to organize one of these shows and to get it going and have everything right and stuff. Tony doing graphics on the back end. But I guarantee you tonight, after this show's over, they'll be over in Discord, and like a bunch of us from Discord will go into the chat. They'll be planning next week's show starting tonight. And that's just how it works when you're doing these shows. And so, hey, hats off to you guys. You guys have done a great job of building a great channel here on, for a great show. USC at Pac-12 shows. I mean, you guys do a great job of doing it all. So, and
thank you, Joey. And you guys are the masters. Most of you guys, there's so many folks in the Pac-12 community that follow you and Golden Blue Dude. And it really, you guys are the masters. We're along for the ride, and we really appreciate everything you guys do.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, the way you guys promote this show and stuff is just perfect, spot on, and of course I promote you as much as I possibly can. But I mean, you got to have content for people to watch. And I was noticing, you had 100 and some people in here earlier. I don't know how many you have right now, but sometimes it takes shows 3 years before they have 100 people in their comments, and you guys have been doing this for a few weeks. So, it's amazing. Y'all have done a great job. And I realize you're springboarded off of Mark Rogers at the same time, but you know what? Them watchers don't have to view. Those people don't have to view, and that's just they could tune out, and they're not. So that tells me you guys are doing a great job. So, hey, hats off to you guys. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Joey.
Thanks, Joey. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And
y'all have a good
one. One thing that I kind of wanted to throw at you guys and get your opinions on. We were talking earlier how the NIL deals have affected not only the Pac-12 but every conference in general. One thing, being a Utah fanboy, sorry guys.
Hey, we love and respect you.
Yeah. So
actually, no. Let me rephrase that. We love, respect, and quite honestly, fear the Utes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a great game. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I got my voice back earlier this week, Saturday or Sunday from that game a week ago. At the same time, I'd like to add, Utah has one true 4-star recruit on the roster. That's Clark Phillips. Lander Barton ended up being a 4-star recruit right before he got on campus. But how do you think the NIL, just in general, has affected the Pac-12 and other conferences in general? And, I think, going back to what I had said earlier, having one 4-star recruit on the roster and still being able to hang in with teams like USC, UCLA, etc., says something about the Utah coaching staff in general.
So I wouldn't put us in. I think a really important distinction is I would not put us in USC's boat in the NIL like conversation. I think there's two teams in the Pac-12 that can play the NIL game right now, and that's Oregon and it's USC. And I think everyone else is in a different division. Go do me a favor after this and look at your favorite recruiting site and go look at our recruiting classes from the last 2 or 3 years. And part of that is on chip, but part of that is I think there's another part of the story is that I think a lot of people think of UCLA as the LA school, money's flowing left and right, et cetera, et cetera. We don't really even still have a true collective. We're bringing in transfers, but it's not the dudes that we're getting outside of like Charbonnet we did, and Bobo's been great, but Charbonnet's a guy coming back home because he was in a full backfield to a place that had put out some good running backs over the last couple of years, and he came in to do the same thing. And
aren't your 3 best defensive lineman transfers as well?
Yeah, but from North Texas, right? We're not kidding. The kids that got $100,000 to go to Texas A&M and aren't knocking down our door. It's a different class of kid. You guys have Wasserman, right, Chris? I mean, you got some deep pockets. Yeah, but Wasserman, and he built the facility. He had a very big part in building the facility. It's literally called the Wasserman football facility, but he is a agent and represents talent, and it's already quite known that he is not going to meddle in the NIL thing with the team itself because there's a huge conflict of interest.
If they're hard up, you also have Geffen.
When have they given anything to the football program?
They maybe they aren't asked. Who knows? But Zach, one point that I do want to make, though, that I think is a big thing, and I think it reflects on Utah, but I think it also reflects on USC, is that great coaching and is also about putting together great team chemistry. And nobody does that better than Utah. Nobody does it better than Utah. But look at what's happening at USC, where these guys have gelled together and they love each other and they're thriving together, versus look at what's happening at A&M or Miami. Also, right. I mean, places that had unlimited checkbooks. And you start to see that it's not just, do you have the money? Do you buy the players? Do you get whatever? It's also coaching and putting together a team and taking guys that, maybe weren't as successful somewhere else and making them into stars and having them learn how to be leaders. And again, nobody does that better than Utah. But I think that what Utah shows is that, hey, that matters. Talent selection matters. And it's not just Billy Beane Moneyball style, but choosing the right talent matters, and how you put it together as a team to make it successful matters. And I think you see that with Lincoln Riley and Kyle Whittingham.
I definitely agree. Again, we can go back and say, rightfully so, that Utah's 3 best offensive players have all come from the transfer portal. I mean, Davon Thomas came from Cincinnati. Dalton Kincaid came from the University of San Diego. Cam Rising came from the University of Texas. I think obviously the transfer portal's kind of opened everything up for college football in general. But aside from that, as far as the NIL deal goes.
And Zach, let me give you one other example. Sure. USC had a quarterback room of Ricky Town, Max Brown, Keaton Slovis, JT Daniels. I mean, we're talking like USC gave away to the transfer portal because it wasn't working out. Something like 29 stars worth of quarterbacks in the past 3 years or something.
Yeah,
just
absolutely
bananas. And so, I think it is a lot about choosing the right guys.
I fully agree. And you look to see, JT Daniels has kind of had, a somewhat good career after he left USC. And again, that kind of goes back to the coaching. I think when Lincoln Riley came in, that quarterback room is only going to grow and prosper from here, especially with him being there. And again, going back to the NIL deal, a great quarterback is going to want to choose, money in LA over, Utah and Salt Lake City, so I think that's also going to open up some doors, especially with them leaving for the Big Ten. So what's your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I'll add one more thing to it. I think great quarterbacks are going to flock to a guy like Lincoln Riley, who's known for giving Heisman's and first round draft picks as
Absolutely.
well. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's USC does, like Chris said, have deep pockets, but it's a premier program and it's got its crap together now. So there's a lot more to it just than the NIL. I mean, getting Lincoln Riley, showing for first time in, I don't know, a better part of almost a decade that they're fully committed, not just halfway, not just whatever, fully committed to football like the big boys are playing in the SEC and some of the schools in the Big Ten and Big 12. Fully committed to football. That's the first time in a long time. So that's also going to bring in those recruits.
Hey guys, as we chat real quick, we're adding in Clayton too, who's been waiting. But sorry, keep going, guys.
Yeah, Tim, I definitely agree with your point there. Bringing Lincoln Riley in was probably one of the best things to happen to USC, obviously in the last decade for sure. And at the same time, like you said, with him being there, NIL, everything else that's going on, moving to the Big Ten, I think that they're just going to grow and prosper even more. It'll be interesting when they do move to the Big Ten. I don't think they're going to see any offenses on the West Coast like they will see in Wisconsin or Iowa. They might go cross-eyed when they see 3 tight ends on one side of the field.
Yeah, but we've seen that. It's over the years, like Stanford, right? They love to do that crap. And you had a couple really good tight ends, and you have a great tight end that you only needed one. You didn't need 2 or 3, and you took one tight end. So maybe you don't need 3 tight ends, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're still going to be playing. There's some pretty damn good offenses, right?
Absolutely.
Ohio State. You know what I mean? So it's not like we're going to walk in and have the best show in the conference.
Definitely agree. But I'll get out of here, guys. Appreciate you guys having me on. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks
for calling. Call in anytime.
Great call.
Thank you.
We're really glad to have you.
Take care.
Good luck to your Utes.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Clayton, welcome to the show.
Looks like he's having tech issues.
Oh, Clayton, are you having tech issues?
Is it the last hour, or can you bring somebody else in, Tony, and trade him out? Or
Clayton, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull you out. Clayton, get out of StreamYard and then try to come back in. See if it lets you do that. What I'll do is I can bounce you out, or just close your window and then reopen it. We'll give Clayton just there he goes. Hold on, we'll give him a sec to come back. That was great, you guys. Everybody tonight has been so awesome, and to anybody who's trying to call in when the room was all full, we certainly love to have. If you've got a sec, we'd love to have you call in back. We've got a few more minutes here. We'd love to have you.
Hey, I want to thank Joey Foster for the kind words that he had for our show. But honestly, it's the viewers in the chat. We appreciate you showing up every week. It's growing. I can speak, I think, for the group. We get juiced by your participation, your questions, you coming in, calling in, your passion for college football. That's why we do this show. We love it. We just want to give you a view of the Pac-12, an honest view. Yes, we'll talk bad about the conference when it's bad, and we'll talk good about the conference when it's good. But we're not here saying Pac-12, Pac-12, Pac-12. We don't do that. We let our friends down in the South go ahead and rally behind their SEC. But they never talk bad about their conference. Hey, we're here to talk bad about our conference when it deserves it. A lot of times it does deserve it. But thank you guys.
And Clayton, can you hear us? Uh-oh. Oh no, Clayton. It's not. Clayton keeps giving you the spinning wheel of death. We're sorry. Maybe try from a different browser. Like if you're in Explorer or you're in Chrome, try from Explorer or Firefox or something. Because it's not syncing you up. If you can hear that.
I'm getting hypnotized.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, before we all get hypnotized, Clayton, come back if you can. Hold on, we're bringing Will ND back on for just a minute. Will, what did you think about the NIL discussion and thinking while we wait for Clayton to come back and thinking about Notre Dame?
Well, I think we have to do a certain. We aren't like as open with it as other teams are, but we definitely give our athletes some benefits. Like Kyle Hamilton and Cam Hart, they had their podcast. I don't know, Cam might still be doing the podcast, but like we aren't like as open with it. Like we aren't with like Texas A&M. But I think this will help Notre Dame in the long run because once NIL gets a little more structured, and that like you can't do everything, like Oregon's doing, like Texas A&M's doing, then I feel like we'll be in a good spot because we're already used to be doing NIL how it was meant to be used.
Well, here's a question for you: are they still putting players up like 3 to a room in God Quad, or have they adjusted some of the living conditions?
I'm pretty sure the players still live with students, especially their freshman year. I don't know how it is now with the upperclassmen though. But that'll be interesting. I'd like to have a player on sometime, so I'm gonna try to reach out, especially during the off season, to hopefully be able to interview a player on my channel.
That would be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
yeah.
All right, well, guys, so go ahead.
I was going to take a look at the couple other Pac-12 games if you wanted me to still do a couple of notes on them. But
yeah, give us your notes on it real quick, guys. Will has a great channel. He does live streams of game coverage, previews and stuff. Really, really fantastic stuff.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to start to do the Notre Dame post game this week, so that'll be fun.
Oh, that's awesome! So you're going to be covering the Notre Dame Syracuse post game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be fun. Hopefully not too angry. Hopefully I won't be too upset. Hopefully we play well and win.
What time does that game kick off, Will?
It's a nooner.
Okay.
But Ben, who co-hosts, likes to do it on Sunday. So the post-game show on Sunday.
Okay. I'll have to check that out. So when the Irish win and Syracuse loses,
hopefully.
That'll be a fun
Rudy versus the Fruit. I like it.
Fun post.
As SEC football tells us.
That's a good one.
That's Uncle Lou calls us Rudy, and he always calls them the Fruit. So yeah. Arizona State, Colorado is morbidly interesting.
It is a sicko game.
Yeah.
It's our version of Northwestern and Iowa.
Yeah. That could be a fun game. Colorado, although they're awful, they still pack the house.
Yep.
I think it's pretty interesting.
They do. They get good crowds.
Boulder's a good town. I've seen a game there. Pearl Street. It's a great atmosphere. It was cold. I was there on a Friday night, and kickoff. It was 32 degrees at 6:30 local time.
That's getting colder too. That's not gonna be fun.
But they had some beverages to warm you up. So,
well, guys, I guess Clayton is not gonna be able to rejoin us. So I guess we'll get ready to wrap up here. Will, any final thoughts here? And guys, check out Will and Ben's post game.
Mm-hmm.
Any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
I'm just so excited for this Utah-Washington State game. This game should be on ABC primetime, but you know what? We'll take Pac-12 After Dark on a Thursday night over it being at the same time as other games. So
well said.
I get to spend all my time attention to this one game, and it's going to be a great game.
Well, hey, thanks for calling in, and congratulations on the new post-game show. We can't wait to see it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll see you soon.
See you guys.
See you.
Chris, any final thoughts?
Congrats to the Ducks for the win. Looking forward to hopefully getting right against David Shaw and the Cardinal this weekend. Thanks for everyone for calling in. I really do have a lot of fun doing this show. And so thanks to everyone else on the panel, and thanks to everyone in the chat, and looking forward to the weekend. Go Bruins.
Chris, man, thank you. You're awesome. Appreciate you.
Go Bruins. Oh, bad angle. Sorry. Who's next? LBC?
I'll jump in. Hey, thank you to everybody in the chat, all our callers that called in. We do this show for you guys. If there's any suggestions, please let us know. There's my Twitter. If there's any beers that you want information on or would like to suggest for the future winners for next week, which you thought were the best games, drop them on my Twitter. Follow me for college football and SC content. To the panel, great job tonight, guys. Had a lot of fun. Enjoyed the bye week. Got my battery recharge, so to speak. So enjoy bringing it. And looking forward to USC going to Tucson and taking care of business and moving on. And looking forward to another great week of college football as we move towards next week, which will be the first week of the college football playoff show on ESPN. That should be a dumpster fire, which everybody's going to want to tune in because the first one usually is. There's going to be a lot of animosity on Twitter. There already is right now. Nicole Auerbach is saying how she's dreading Tuesday nights because she's going to be in an angry mood because there's so many angry people on Twitter. But that's what college football is all about, man. The Big 12 is going to get their pitchforks out. The SEC is going to get their sticks with fire burning, and everybody's got their narrative going. And, hey, we're just chilling out here in the Pac-12 having some good craft beer and watching some college football, and we'll let the talking heads control the narrative and piss everybody off. But with that, good luck to your teams. Fight on, and we'll catch you next Wednesday.
Fight on, LBC.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad that we have a game, right? It was there was some great. I'm glad we had such great football last week, but I'm really happy that that I'm actually going to have an SC game to watch. I love having a great Thursday game. That's going to be awesome tomorrow to kick off the Pac-12 weekend. And again, we talked about it. I'm just grateful that we've decided as a Pac-12 that we want to start playing football again. And when we do, we are a force. Appreciate all the fans out there that aren't Pac-12 fans that tune in, but we really absolutely appreciate all you Pac-12 fans. This is the idea. We're trying to give you guys a voice. And Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first time we've ever filled up our call queue. So
I know it was giving us this. You guys, we're so sorry. It was giving us these little like dings. It's like you can't have any more people in the room, and we're like, no, we've never had that problem.
And no, sadly, we haven't been close to that problem. But we really appreciate you guys bringing just the energy that, because Tony, Rick, and I, we're texting all day long, like literally about USC football and Pac-12 and regional and national games. But we want to hear from you guys. You guys absolutely, Rick said it the best. You guys drive this show. We love Tony. Joey was right. Tony spends a lot of time on these graphics and setting it up. Thank you, Tony, for making all this happen. I'm really happy to see that you guys are enjoying it. Please call in if you didn't get in this week. Please call in next week. And we'd love to hear from you. And thanks again, Tony.
Thank you, Tim. And again, thank you to all of you guys. We really can't thank you enough for everybody that calls in, everybody that joins in the chat, and those of you guys, David, Georgia Reload, everybody that helps support the channel. Thank you so much. That makes a huge difference because it helps make the whole Voice of College Football channel possible. And we want to, first of all, again, thank Mark Rogers because he's the GOAT. He really does a phenomenal job creating a community, and we are all lucky and very blessed to be a part of it. And we want to thank him, and we want to thank you guys. because again, this show is for you. So if you've always thought about calling in sometime, call in next time. We'd love to have you. It'd be a lot of fun. It's great to hear what you guys think about the conference. Even if you're not from the Pac-12, we want to hear from you. So I just want to give one last final thank you to Tim, Chris, and Rick, 3 just absolutely phenomenal guys that I personally am very, very, very lucky to get the chance to do this with. So thanks, guys. We'll see you for the USC postgame right after the game live, and next week for week 10 of our Pac-12 Chat Show Live. Thanks again, everybody. Take care and fight on.